Welcome to r/entitled parents, where Karen is furious with her son for having a rich girlfriend. My mom is furious with my brother for dating someone wealthier than us, and it's tearing us apart. So little background. I, 35 female, have a younger brother who's 27, and I've always seen him as the black sheep of our family. He's had some learning challenges, which made school harder for him, and he's got the least amount of college education out of all of us. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. He also lived at home longer than any of us. It felt like no one really expected much from him, and I've always been the only one who treated him like an equal and didn't talk down to him. He's even told me more than once that I'm the only person who's always believed in him, and I'm his favorite sibling. It's nice to know that, honestly. Fast forward to now. He started dating this amazing girl who's 26, who I think is perfect for him. They clearly care about each other, and I really hope it works out. But here's where things get tricky. She and her family are much wealthier than ours, and from the start, I could tell that it made our mom a little uneasy. I don't know if it was jealousy or insecurity, but she's been really uncomfortable with the whole situation. On top of that, my brother has always had this dream of working in the film industry, and well, his girlfriend's family has some industry connections. He's been working on TV shows for the past year, and it's been great for him. But honestly, I think our mom sees it as a shortcut, like he didn't really earn it because of who he's dating. She's made some comments to that effect. Now, to add a little fuel to the fire, his girlfriend always brings over these fancy foods when they visit. And I mean fancy. Stuff that's clearly a step above what our mom is used to cooking. I think it's just making our mom feel more and more insecure. And honestly, she's starting to resent my brother for it. She keeps acting like he's living some sort of perfect life now, and it's honestly hard to watch. I know part of it has to do with the fact that my brother is also the only one who doesn't have student debt. It's like the more he does well, the more our mom gets upset about it. So last week, my brother told us that his girlfriend invited him to move in with her in Manhattan, and he's actually going to do it. This is when things got really escalated. Tonight, we had a family dinner, minus my brother, of course. The conversation turned to him moving to the city, and you could just feel the tension in the air. My sister is upset because she's always wanted to live in the city, but doesn't have the job to support it. My other brother is bitter because my brother's living his dream job while he had to give his up. But honestly, the worst part was our mom. She just could not stop making snarky comments about my brother's life now. She's acting like he didn't earn anything and is somehow just riding his girlfriend's coattail. She even went as far as to question why she's with him, implying that maybe he's only with her for the money. Every time she said something, I tried to stick up for him. I kept telling her how proud I am of him and how happy I am that he's doing well. But it was like no one was listening. By the end of the night, it was pretty clear that any defense of my brother was completely unwelcome, and I started to feel like the odd one out. I ended up calling my brother to let him know how proud I am of him, and he invited me to come see his new apartment. He even offered for me to stay with them in the city for a few days, which I thought was really sweet. Now I'm stuck. I love my brother, and I've always had his back, but I don't know how to handle this situation with my mom. I'm dealing with a lot of stress with my fiance and my job right now, and I honestly just don't have the energy for a family divide. I don't want to lose my relationship with my mom or anyone else in the family, but at the same time, I'm not going to stop supporting my brother. It's just such a frustrating and stressful situation to be in. So, as long as everyone is struggling and miserable, then it's all good? When one person appears to find happiness, love, and success, then the family implodes? Well, I'm Camp Little Bro. His girlfriend thinks he's beautiful, and if your family can't see the amazing qualities he has, then they don't deserve him. Sorry, your family sounds terrible. Am I the jerk for giving crappy Christmas gifts and ruining my marriage? I, 31 female, married my soon-to-be ex-husband, 33, in 2018. From the start, his family hated me. They never made an effort to hide it, and he always brushed it off, saying they just had a tough exterior and would warm up to me over time. Spoiler, they didn't. One of the most ridiculous moments was when I brought a homemade cake to a family dinner. I was raised to always bring something as a guest, so I thought this would be a nice gesture. I walked into the kitchen, handed it to his mom, and she took the plate, walked over to the trash can, dumped the cake right in, and handed me the empty plate back. I was stunned. When I told my husband, he confronted her, and suddenly the crocodile tears started. She claimed she lost her grip and dropped it, so it had to be thrown away. My sister-in-law immediately backed up her story. That was just one example of the nonsense I dealt with. They called me a gold digger behind my back because my husband owned a business. They pushed for a prenup, which I signed without hesitation, thinking it would put their paranoia to rest. It didn't. Then lockdown hit. His business tanked, and we drained both his savings and mine trying to keep it afloat. I refused to take on debt for it, so he finally shut it down. By 2022, he was struggling with severe depression because of everything he lost. His solution? Moving back to his hometown to be near his family. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Once we moved, he decided to only work part-time while trying to restart his business, which meant I became the primary breadwinner. On top of that, I also took on the mental load of things like buying gifts for his family. Stupidly, I thought that if I put effort into thoughtful, expensive presents, they'd finally see I was trying to be part of their family. Meanwhile, anything given to us as a couple was obviously meant just for him. Every holiday, every birthday, every event was with them. Monthly family dinners. I started noticing that whenever I joined a conversation, everyone would go silent until I stopped talking. So I stopped talking altogether when I visited. Then came Christmas. His family made their plans, and a few days later, my husband casually informed me that they didn't want me there for Christmas Eve or Christmas lunch because I ruined the family vibe. I told him, fine, then we'll do our own thing instead. He refused to make other plans and said he was still going. This was the moment I knew our marriage was over. So I returned every thoughtful, expensive gift I had bought for his family and replaced them with garbage. Father-in-law got a pair of tacky business socks. Mother-in-law got a bottle of cheap supermarket shampoo. Sister-in-law got the nastiest perfume I could find at the dollar store. And brother-in-law and his wife's tiny chihuahua got a rawhide bone, way too big for it to chew. Even the dog. And brother-in-law and wife's tiny chihuahua got a rawhide bone, way too big for it to chew. Total cost? Maybe $15. The rest of that money went straight into my savings for a new apartment. Christmas Day, he came home furious. Apparently, I humiliated and embarrassed him in front of his family. I asked why on earth he thought I'd buy nice gifts for people who went out of their way to make me feel unwelcome. He had no answer. Last week, I served him divorce papers. Remember how he was supposed to be a millionaire by now? That prenup he and his family were so eager for? Turns out, it protects me, not him. Since we had to keep separate accounts, he gets nothing from my savings, no alimony, nothing. He can't afford rent or car insurance, but that's not my problem anymore. My friends and family are split. Some are cheering me on for going out in a blaze of glory, while others think I was being too petty. So, was I the jerk? Not the jerk. He chose his family over you and still expected you to buy them all presents. This was perfectly planned and well-deserved for every one of them, including him. Even the Chihuahua? Want me to cook for my own appreciation event? Gotta make sure I don't violate the overtime policy. Years ago, I worked in a satellite office of a massive department in a giant corporation. We had over 300 people, but the office was split into two groups. Half the staff had full salaries and benefits, while the rest of us were hourly contractors. And when I say split, I mean it. We weren't just different on paper, we were treated like second-class citizens. The department was run by two women who were absolutely the worst. They loved telling people they were like sisters, but honestly, when you have sisters like them, one of them usually ends up under Dorothy's house. Like most corporations, they were constantly spewing nonsense about how much they valued us. They showed us this deep appreciation by throwing us a potluck. Exciting, right? They hyped it up, talking about surprises and delicious food, all made by our coworkers. And then, as expected, the catch dropped. The company itself would be providing soft drinks. That's it. Because alcohol was forbidden on company property. Well, except when it wasn't, but that's another story. The actual food? That was up to us. Employees were expected to bring homemade dishes, nothing store-bought, because we had to share the love. While they didn't put it in writing, word got around that not contributing would be noted. So let's break this down. The company wouldn't spend a single dime to feed us, but expected us to donate our time, effort, and money to create the illusion that they gave a crap. Keep in mind, half of us didn't even get health insurance. This nonsense came straight from the top, and I decided they needed to feel the full weight of their stupidity. 2 days before the potluck, I was on a call with my boss, and I casually dropped a grenade in her lap. Boss: "Oh, before we go, I noticed you declined my Outlook invite for the potluck. What's up?" Me: "Oh, I need to leave early to cook for it, since I assumed you can't authorize overtime for that." "Overtime?" Me: "Yeah, my recipe takes about an hour to make, and the actual potluck is 2 hours after work. So I was going to leave 3 hours early to stay at 40 hours this week." Boss: "Wait, you expect to be paid for cooking?" Me: "Half the staff is hourly. Does this for-profit company expect 150 contractors to donate 3 or more hours of their personal time to cook for their own appreciation meal?" Boss: "Oh my goodness, nobody thought of how this looks. She was mostly talking to herself at this point. Me. Or nobody expected to be called out on it. Boss. But who's getting called out on it? Oh, you're at your desk, aren't you? Where everyone can hear. Me. Correct. Boss. I have to go. Now, I actually liked my boss. She had enough on her plate, and I felt a little bad throwing her into the fire. But I knew she had tossed that grenade up the chain to the people who get paid to know better. We didn't hear much from corporate, but I later found out my call sent people at the main office into a panic. Higher-ups scrambled around for a day and a half trying to do damage control. Mission accomplished. The end result? They moved the potluck to lunchtime, which meant contractors were now being paid to attend. And for our office only, they bought pizzas. But because this company couldn't help itself, there was one last bit of corporate stupidity. We were explicitly told not to eat the pizza while Skyping in for the event because the other offices might get upset. That's right. Instead of just buying everyone food, they decided to micromanage optics, making us pretend the pizza didn't exist. And yes, all the satellite offices Skyped into this thing like it was the Dunder Mifflin Infinity launch. So in the end, they spent way more time and energy cleaning up their own mess than they would have if they had just done the right thing from the start. Totally worth it. Am I the jerk for moving out of my boyfriend's over salsa? So a little backstory. I've been with my boyfriend for 2 years now, and things are generally amazing. We're both in college and living together with a couple of roommates. The place is actually my boyfriend's mom's vacation house, so we all pitch in for rent. Everything's been fine until recently. Every week, my boyfriend's mom stops by. It's never been a big deal until this one specific thing started happening. I work at a restaurant and usually get free chips and salsa to take home. My boyfriend loves spicy stuff, so I always grab him some spicy salsa and I'll get myself the regular stuff because I can't handle the heat. Seems harmless enough, right? Well, here's where it gets weird. I've been coming home after work, excited to grab my salsa, only to find that everything is in one big container. Not just my salsa, but his spicy salsa too. This has been going on for months now, and it's been happening so often that I just started getting frustrated. At first, I thought maybe I was just mixing them up by mistake, but it kept happening. So I started asking everyone in the house, including my boyfriend, if they knew anything about it. Of course, everyone denied it. No one fessed up. A couple weeks ago, I finally decided I'd had enough. I'm a little stubborn, so I got a security camera set up in the kitchen to figure out who was messing with my salsa. And guess who it was? My boyfriend's mom. She's been coming over while we're gone, going through our fridge, pulling out both salsas, and mixing them together in a bigger container. I couldn't believe it. I'd been thinking it was my boyfriend this whole time, and I had been accusing him of doing it for months. No wonder he looked so confused when I brought it up. I was furious. I mean, who does that? I don't care if it's a little thing, but it feels like an invasion of our space. She's been doing this every week, and at this point, it felt like she was just messing with me on purpose. So I decided to tell my boyfriend that he needs to talk to her and figure out why she's doing this. He calls her, and she tells him she's just making space in the fridge and that she's not going to stop doing it. That's when I lost it. I packed up all my stuff, ready to leave. Honestly, I couldn't handle it anymore. I told my boyfriend I was done and I was leaving, but he says I'm being ridiculous and a jerk about the whole thing. He thinks I'm overreacting, and I don't know if I'm just being crazy or if this is actually a huge boundary issue. So Reddit, am I the jerk here for wanting to leave over this? Should I just let it go and try to talk to my boyfriend's mom about it calmly? Or is it really as weird as I think it is? Please let me know what you think. Not the jerk. I was honestly going to say you were right up until the end where the mom goes, "I'm doing it and I'm not going to stop." Bottom line, if she's like this now, she will be like this forever, and it doesn't look like the boyfriend is in any mind to try and make her stop. So it boils down to, can you live with your potential future mother-in-law doing this kind of thing to you for the rest of your life? If the answer is no, there's no reason to stick around. Break up, move out, find a relationship that you can live in, because it sounds like this one sure ain't it. Let's get it straight. This is not about salsa. You do not have a mother-in-law problem, you have a boyfriend problem. Male, mid-50s here, married for many years, almost 20. Early into our marriage, my parents stayed with us for a weekend. While my spouse and I were away, my mother took it on herself to rearrange our silverware drawer and its location in our kitchen, in the home my spouse and I, owned. I saw it for the personal space violation that it was, and my parents never stayed with us again. My mother decided to mess around and she found out. You have a boyfriend problem because he can't set boundaries with his mother. I'm not happy in my marriage anymore, and I'm not sure if I should just call it quits. For starters, I, 31 female, have been with my husband who's 33 for over 11 years, married for 4. He's been my best friend, my partner in crime, the love of my life. But lately, I've been feeling off, unhappy, like something just isn't clicking anymore. Not too long ago, I found out he downloaded a dating app while he was away on a work trip. I was completely blindsided. He swore up and down that he never actually used it, that he just got curious and made an account, but never messaged anyone. We fought about it for almost a week. I thought about leaving, but in the end, I chose to believe him. Maybe that was stupid, maybe not, but he seemed genuinely sorry, and I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. What really started to get to me, though, was how he acted afterwards, like nothing had happened, like everything was just fine and dandy. I wasn't expecting him to spend every second begging for my forgiveness, but I thought there'd be something, some kind of effort, some kind of acknowledgement that he broke my trust. Instead, he just went right back to normal, expecting me to do the same. I brought it up, and to his credit, he really did listen. He started putting in more effort, being more open with me, and I could tell he was trying. And yet, for some reason, I still felt irritated with him over the dumbest things. Even tiny little white lies would set me off. I knew I was being unfair, but I couldn't stop myself from feeling that way. And then yesterday happened. I was at work when he texted me, "Hey, I got you a snack at the store," which made me happy. He knows I love surprises, even little ones. When I got home, he handed me a chocolate bar I really like, and I thanked him. Then I asked what else he picked up, since we had just gone grocery shopping a few days ago. He listed off a few things, and then mentioned he got himself a snack too. "Cool, what'd you get?" "Oh, just some chips," he said, holding up 2 giant family-sized bags. I was a little thrown off. Like, okay, that's a lot of chips, but whatever, not a big deal. Later, I was sorting through junk mail and happened to glance at the trash can, and there it was, a completely empty carton of ice cream. I don't know why, but in that moment, I felt done. Not because of the ice cream itself, obviously, but because he lied to me. I walked over to him and asked again, "Hey, are you sure that's all you brought from the store?" He hesitated, then finally admitted, "Okay, yeah, I got some ice cream too." I didn't yell. I didn't even feel angry, just tired. He lied to my face over something so small, and all I could think was, if he can lie so easily about the ice cream, what else is he lying about? What else has he lied about? I feel stupid for even writing this. It's just ice cream. It's just a dumb snack. But I can't shake this feeling that it's not really about that. Is this a rough patch? Something we can work through? Or is this the beginning of the end? If you've been through something like this, how did you know whether to keep fighting or let it go? What reason would he have to be on a dating app if he swears he didn't do anything? You're not upset about the ice cream. You're trying to avoid the bigger deal, which is the dating site, and projecting it onto the ice cream because, understandably so, you want to avoid its implications and consequences and what it means about your relationship. That's the problem when people do things that break trust. It can take years and years for it to go away, and if it's a trust issue, any further trust issues are more damaging as the relationship has been damaged by the first trust issue. If the dating app thing didn't exist, this would have bounced off your relationship, but since it's got a crack in it already from the previous damage, the ice cream was able to damage the relationship even more. I told my sister-in-law I'll disown her if she gets pregnant. I, 33 female, live with my brother who's 32 and his new wife who's 34. Things have been fine to a point, and I definitely appreciate them taking me in during my time of need. That's not lost on me. I recognize they didn't have to help me, and I'm incredibly thankful that they've done that. But my sister-in-law has baby fever, and she's talking about trying to get pregnant. First of all, I know my brother had the snip after his divorce from his first wife. He would have to have the procedure reversed, and his insurance will not cover it. And to be frank, they cannot afford that. Part of why they allowed me to move in was because they're in financial trouble, and I'm contributing quite a lot of money to the bills right now. I cover probably 2/3 of all of the bills because my sister-in-law doesn't work, and my brother pays an ungodly amount of child support to his ex-wife. The financial issues can go ahead and be another point in the discussion. My sister-in-law can also barely take care of herself. She sleeps most of the day. She does not clean, she does not cook, she doesn't take care of the kids she already has. Her daughter is 6 years old, and she doesn't even interact with her unless she has to. That's a totally separate issue. I've become a live-in maid and nanny on top of working 45 or more hours a week. My sister-in-law lost custody of her other kid about 2 years ago. He's 11 and he lives with family now. I do not know why she even lost custody, but she did not fight to get him back. 2 days ago, my brother told me he has an appointment to meet with his doc to discuss the reversal so him and sister-in-law can try for a baby. I told them they were out of their minds. It got explosive, and I finally asked who was going to take care of a baby when my brother works full-time, I work full-time, and she constantly makes excuses to not even do basic things around the house, like take the dog outside. She really had the nerve to tell me, "I thought you could handle them when you get off of work, before your brother gets home, so the load is evenly distributed." I blew up. I told her I'm not going to be a parent to another one of her kids, and that if they really do this, then I'm totally done and they're on their own. I told my brother I would always love him and help him if he needs me, but that I would never talk to sister-in-law and make sure the rest of the family disowns her too. I think I was probably the jerk for saying that the way I did. She started crying and locked herself in the bedroom. My brother is threatening to kick me out, and again, I might be the jerk for this. I told him he can't afford to kick me out, and he can't afford a replacement maid/nanny like I have been. I told our mom about what happened, and she not only thinks I'm not the jerk, but is now mad at my brother. Our dad, however, said I am the jerk because it isn't my place to say anything about my brother's decisions. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Edit. 1. I moved in over a year ago when I was down on my luck and unemployed. The conditions for me moving in was that I help around the house until I was back on my feet. Their financial situation changed though, and they asked me to stay, which is why I've been living with them this long. What I did not expect was to get almost 100% of the workload in the home in addition to working longer hours than my brother. We've had multiple conversations about how I felt it was unfair that I do so much, and my sister-in-law said they helped me, so I'm obligated to help now. Had I known this would be thrown in my face, I would have rather been homeless. 2. I chose to be child-free, but I love my stepniece, and leaving at this point would hurt her the most. The authorities have been called many times, not even by myself, but their friends and my brother's ex-wife, because they feel my niece was being neglected. My ex-sister-in-law specifically said mistreatment, and that she had even witnessed it in the past. My niece is definitely troubled. She has a therapist. I'm really limited on what I can do when people who are supposed to help just won't. 3. I'm still reading the comments. I will reply as I can. I was fully prepared going into this story to say you were the jerk, but after reading it, not the jerk. Your dad's right. It shouldn't be your business, but they made it that way because they're including you in their childcare plans. If she wants another kid so bad, why not work at getting the kid she already has and lost custody of back? You need to get out of this living situation and detangle yourself from them. Before your brother can kick you out, find yourself a tiny apartment so you can watch the inevitable disaster from a safe distance. Not the jerk, but get out now. You're already paying and working far too much for this household, and you're enabling a lazy parent. Without you, their dumb marriage will hopefully implode before he gets his vasectomy reversed. OP. I've decided I'm going to move. I have a coworker who's moving at the end of July, and the landlord there is looking for a new tenant. I make more than enough right now, so she's putting me in contact with him. It's a small studio apartment, but it's a very short commute. I don't know how to tell my brother I'm leaving because even though I am really mad still, he's my family, and I know moving will put him in a rough spot. I'm also worried about my stepniece, so I'm figuring out what I can do about that. People have recommended talking to a mandated reporter and recording any mistreatment, so I think that's what I'm going to do. To the people asking what my brother sees in her, truthfully, I'm not sure. I suspect his pride is in the way, due to him jumping into a new marriage right after his divorce, and he doesn't want to admit that it did not go as planned. Someone else said it might be a Band-Aid baby, and that sounds accurate enough. My brother swears that he's happy, but I've never seen him this miserable before. He's always upset about the financial situation, and if anything, sister-in-law makes it so much worse because she's always buying stuff. She has him very far in debt, and they eat fast food almost all the time because they don't like to cook. As to what sister-in-law does all day, when I say nothing, I really mean nothing. She has no hobbies, she just sits on her phone all day. She's definitely mentally ill, but she lies about a lot, so I don't know what's true and what isn't. Not the jerk. There's nothing scarier than a mother who has lost custody of one of her kids getting pregnant with another. Nope, nope, nope. Malicious compliance by all the students caused the whole school to reek. This is an old story I had forgotten about until just now. Ah, the nostalgia. It happened when I was in middle school, about 2010. A bit of context. I live in an old rural town, not in the US. The only middle school in this town used to be a nursery, the kind where plants and trees are grown or sold, not a medical nursery. Most of the trees weren't cut down when the place became a school, and a few of them were fruit trees. 3 or 4 of them were mango trees. Us kids loved taking them home by the bunches to enjoy with our families or eating them during lunch and breaks. Occasionally, some kids would try throwing rocks or sticks at the tree branches to make some mangoes fall. One of the teachers didn't like this. Understandably, throwing rocks could be dangerous, but nobody was throwing them at each other, and they were careful looking around for any people passing by so as to not hurt anyone. The most logical thing to do would have been to forbid students from throwing things at trees, but instead, the school passed a rule that any student caught picking up mangoes, whether they were on the floor or trying to get them from the trees, would get in trouble or even face suspension. We all thought it was a dumb idea, but me and a few other students could smell the eventual disaster from a mile away. So nobody protested and everyone at school agreed to comply, even the kids who were known to be rebellious. Well, about a month or so later, the whole school was absolutely stinking of rotten mangoes. And for those of you who don't know, mango season usually peaks during early spring and late summer. Plus, in the state we're in, rainy season hits in the summer. So imagine old rotting mangoes and muddy water puddles that sits for days at a time. And the summer heat, not a good combination of smells. The teachers by that point told us that if we see a mango in good condition that can be eaten, we could pick it up. But we couldn't possibly break the new rule that was imposed by a respectable teacher. We must obey like the good students we are. The school had to pay a cleanup crew to dump all of the rubbish, and some of the parents, my mom included, complained about the wastefulness of perfectly edible fruit. The next school year, we were all enjoying delicious mangonadas, which is a mango-flavored ice pop with a spicy sweet sauce, under the lovely shade and those good old summer breezes. These ice pops were made and sold by a classmate. The teacher that had originally started the complaints was a loyal customer. The time my Christian school didn't like my t-shirt. So I just remembered this after talking about high school with a friend, and it jogged my memory. So I went to a Christian high school. Of course, they accepted people of every faith. They weren't that kind of Christian school you sometimes hear about. Well, one day when I was in year 9, maybe 10, I'm in the UK by the way, so ages 13 to 15, we got invited to go on a Christian retreat, which is basically a bunch of students who signed up for it, going to a building like a big sleepover, going hiking, obviously talking about religion, and generally having a good time. Now, something to note, I was, and quite frankly still am, an emo, so I was listening to a lot of different bands and singers that wouldn't be considered Christian. Anyway, me and about 15 other students signed up for this retreat. Most of us weren't religious, but it was a good time to get away from things. It was only a couple hours away from our school, but the mountains and greenery made it so peaceful. Well, on the first day there, we got asked to come into the hall, introduce ourselves, and talk about what was going on. Then they decided to have a little fun. I want us to go around and talk about our t-shirts and share why we wore them, said one of the Christian ladies. No one put their hand up to volunteer, so she started picking on people. She picked one guy who had a generic t-shirt on, and he was reluctant to say anything. Come on now, talk about why you wore your t-shirt and what it means to you. You've got to do it. It's a fun little icebreaker. The boy awkwardly said that he wore it because he liked the band and the color that it was. Then she saw my friendly face. Not kidding. Even though I was an emo, I was super smiley. She said, "Oh, you. Would you like to tell us what's on your t-shirt and why you wore it? Come on, show us all how it's done." Oh well, she did ask for it. I'm wearing a band t-shirt because I like listening to their music. And what does that writing say? Going to heck? Silence. Well, needless to say, we did not continue playing that icebreaker game, and from then on, they didn't really like me. Still had some fun though. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my wife and her friend anymore over what my wife calls a miscommunication? Fake names. My wife, Emily, has a longtime friend, Leslie, who has recently become a single mother. Leslie does not have a working vehicle at the moment and is working 2 jobs, so Emily took it upon herself to help Leslie out as much as she can. Emily had started asking me to help out as well in driving Leslie and her kids around, taking them to school and appointments, taking Leslie to the grocery store, etc., whenever Emily or someone else couldn't. I agreed since it made my wife happy, and I understand the kind of situation Leslie is in. Helping has turned into Emily inviting Leslie and her kids over often, or organizing trips that they would like, such as camping or fishing. A few times, my wife was unable to attend these get-togethers she organized due to work and insisted they still take place, leaving me to entertain Leslie and her kids on my own. Since I've known of Leslie my entire relationship with my wife, I didn't think too much about this. The times that it has been me left with her or sent in Emily's stead to shuttle Leslie around, I've made normal small talk with her and the kids. Recently, Leslie's kids were going to be away for a weekend, so Emily wanted to have Leslie over for dinner and some movies. She asked me to text Leslie to ask her over, and when I did, Leslie replied with, "Just as friends, right? I'm not interested in being anyone's girlfriend." I thought that response was out of left field, so I asked her why she'd even say that, and her response was pretty much, "No guy would be asking me and my kids how we're doing or helping me out unless he wanted something in return." I told Leslie it wasn't anything like that, and then showed my wife the conversation and informed her I would be stepping back from helping her with anything involving Leslie, and to leave me out of any future plans. I also offered to show her the rest of my phone and anything else. Emily believed me, but she still talked to Leslie about it to see what had given her that impression, and accordingly, she gave Emily the same answer. A few days later, Leslie apologized to Emily and told her that her emotions and mind were just all over because of a down day. That's fine, but I'm still not willing to help her or my wife out anymore, as I had been, because I don't want any repeats or accusations hurled at me when I was just helping as my wife had asked. Emily thinks I'm overreacting and should just brush it off because it was just a silly miscommunication that she had had on a bad day. Am I the jerk? Additional info. The text I sent Leslie about the night was, "Emily wants to know if you'd like to come over for dinner and some movies on Saturday." That's why her response was so out of left field. I sent the text because Emily was busy on her phone and wanted to know ASAP so we could make our weekend plans. Not the jerk. Cringe friend. Could have gone a lot worse. Do not help her unless your wife is around. Ew, Leslie. Her mentality that men and women can't be friends without ulterior motives is disgustingly gross on its own, much less about her friend who had been helping her out's husband. Not the jerk. I noticed she didn't apologize to you. She accused you of trying to cheat on your wife. That is no small thing to overlook. Not the jerk. She's ruined a good thing for herself that your kindness was offering. Not the jerk. To be fair, your wife shouldn't have put you in those positions to begin with. Her friend saying what she did makes me concerned that she was developing feelings for you, which would be completely understandable as she's in a vulnerable place and you were stepping up to help her. If it was me, I'd steer clear and let them do their own thing. Why does everyone think this girl was looking for trouble? She was setting boundaries, which is what I would have been doing as well. I would have thought it totally bizarre that my girlfriend's husband was just showing up on his own to do stuff with me. I think the wife has gone completely overboard and put the husband and friend in an awkward situation. She's probably relieved he stopped showing up. There is being supportive, and then there's getting way too involved. As the husband, I would have refused to be volunteered to do all of that stuff. I'd say Leslie is testing the waters to see if a bit of fun with her friend's husband is actually a possibility. Not the jerk. Stay away. Well, what do you think? Is Leslie a jerk or not? Please let us know. I know my opinion will be unpopular, but I think she totally had the right to make sure that he wasn't looking for anything more with her, but I don't know, maybe it's just me. Yeah, I don't feel like she was accusing him of anything. She was just making sure that he wasn't trying to, bounce chicka wow wow. Pretty much. But to be honest, if I had been homeboy, I would have been like, I can keep a secret if you can. Am I the jerk for taking away my daughter's driving privileges after finding out she's using 2 feet? I'm 37, female, and my daughter, who's 16, is in the process of navigating the roads as a new driver. She began studying for and got her permit when she was 15 and had since been receiving driving lessons from my ex-husband, who's 40. She passed her driving test, written and physical portion, and is an outstanding student, so my ex and I decided to gift her a car on her 16th birthday after receiving her license. Growing up, my dad was the one who taught me and my siblings how to ride a bike and later how to drive. It's a fond memory I have of him, so I decided to let her father handle the driving lessons and teaching business, so they could have that as well. Apparently, during these lessons, my daughter started off by using both of her feet. Right foot for the gas, left for the brake. She continued to drive this way for a while, even passing her test this way. Apparently, when my ex-husband found out about this, he brought it up to her and asked her to correct it, but she argued that she had been driving this way since she started and that reverting to the normal way would be potentially dangerous, and that she is uncomfortable doing so. So my ex-husband just dropped it. I, however, was extremely concerned when I found this out, via her dad during casual conversation. I asked him if he thought this was appropriate, and he said he saw nothing wrong and that she was a good driver. I disagreed and told him this was unsafe and that I would be having a chat with our daughter once she arrived home from school. She did. I asked her to sit down, and I tried to explain to her the dangers of what she's doing. Wear and tear on the brakes, potentially pressing the wrong pedal in a split-second emergency situation. Not to mention the higher chance of having your foot on the brake the entire time, which is not only annoying to other drivers, with them not being able to know whether you're actually braking or not, and again, dangerous. I asked her to please take these points into consideration and change her method of driving, to which she argued the only real danger would be forcing her to switch to using only one foot for both pedals after driving for this way for so long. I told her she has only been driving for about a year more or less, and the way she learned with two, she could learn with one, to which she flat out refused. After our conversation and her refusal, I took her keys, and I told her I would be taking her to school from now on, and wherever else she needs to go as well. She was upset and called her dad, who told her to tell me that I'm the jerk and I'm being controlling. He reminded me that her driving record is fine the way she's driving thus far, but it's only been a year, and she will resent me for this. So, am I the jerk? I don't want to come off as controlling, and I definitely don't want my daughter to resent me over this. I'm genuinely concerned for her safety over this, and I'm not sure what to do now. Edit to add, the car is an automatic. I'm certain that if the person she took her driving test with knew she was driving this way, she wouldn't have passed it, at least not in my area. I had a friend drive like that and got told to fix their feet before the car even started moving. End of story, not the jerk. This is an idiotic way of driving. Edit. Seems like lots of other people have similar experiences, and even though this isn't a law, it seems pretty obviously frowned upon. Given that you try to talk to her, you're not the jerk. Clearly this needs more conversation though. Continue talking, calmly and respectfully. But yeah, that's super dangerous. Am I the jerk for telling one of my good friends I wouldn't attend his wedding because my wife wasn't invited? My best friend from college, male 26, and I, male 25, are both having weddings this year. His in June and mine in November. Mine is really more of just a party because I married my wife at the courthouse about a year ago because we didn't want to wait until we could afford the party to commit to each other. He invited me to his wedding, but not my wife. I waited until his deadline for RSVPs and then told him I wouldn't attend because my wife and I go to events together, or we don't go because she's the woman behind me, as I am the man behind her, and we are effectively a unit. I know I shouldn't have waited, but I wanted to try and push off an uncomfortable conversation. He blew up on me and accused me of always choosing others over him and not being a decent friend or caring about him at all. He said that he didn't invite my wife because there physically wasn't enough space at the venue and that I wasn't the only one affected by this. He went on to essentially say that I need to not be a codependent and that he wasn't asking me to go on a 6-month deployment for my family, but that I needed to be there for him to be a good friend. I eventually caved because he made me feel bad, and I said I'd go without my wife. Also after I talked to my wife about it. But my thought now is that if you plan a wedding at a physically small space, it's okay to invite just me. Just by the same token, don't be upset when I decline because you made your bed type of deal. It's also worth noting I had a similar constraint on my wedding, but cut 2 family members to allow both he and his wife to have seats at my wedding. Context. I'm a government controls engineer working on a very expensive, to the tune of higher-ups giving updates to Congress, very time-consuming project currently. I'm not at the top of the chain, but I've been able to advance my career very quickly, so I'm in a position of responsibility. I missed his bachelor party because I needed to travel for a work meeting. He's very much still the Chad bro, let's get drunk type, and I'm not anymore. I have a wife. I have 2 kids who are the absolute most important thing to me. I don't respond to his texts nearly as often or as quickly, and I don't endlessly play video games with our old group like I used to. So I think it's fair for him to feel he's not as important, because while I love him, he also just isn't compared to my career, but most of all, my family. Am I the jerk for saying I wouldn't go, and now thinking I should take back my offer to go after having time to think about it? Edit. I know I'm preachy, so I'll be brief. My wife and I are not attached at the hip. To clarify, weddings, funerals, graduations, work dinners, we go to together. Formal events? If it's girls' night or boys' night level stuff, we have no problem being apart. I also did not send in an RSVP. I let the automatic system do it for me. The website read, RSVP here. No submission will be counted as will not attend at deadline. In my opinion, that reflects very poorly on me in an effort to be fair. Edit. I'm not going to his wedding and he's not going to mine. The friendship has been terminated. Not for just this, but an accumulation of reasons. People asked why I waited to respond knowing it was wrong. I was weak, essentially, and events from our history made me procrastinate because I knew in any event it wouldn't be a good conversation. Not an excuse, and I know I messed up there. I think this was an everyone sucks here, even with all the not the jerks, and I was called on behaviors I have that aren't good, that I now recognize and I agree with. Not the jerk. He's allowed to not invite your wife, but you are also allowed to choose not to go without her. Your friends need to live with the consequences of his actions. You know, sometimes friends cause you way more trouble than they're worth. How my wife ruined her mom's Mother's Day by treating her like a mom. My mother-in-law is an annoying person, to say it in the nicest way. She has extremely low self-worth, and she compensates by forcing the world to go around her. As family who interact with her regularly, we're forced to treat her like a queen, every day, every minute. If we don't, then there will be drama. All the way from pouting, going to her room, fainting, leaving the house to go full-blown breakdown, including saying, "Why should I live on this planet anymore if no one cares about me?" Yeah, to see an old lady say something like this because we don't give her a few minutes of attention is a bizarre thing to witness. So it's exhausting to be around her, but what else can my wife and sister-in-law do? She is their mom, and they both try their darn best to make her feel special. But they would also like to interact with her as their mom too, not just as some out-of-touch royalty. They would like to crack jokes, chat about general things, and share their problems, not having to be constantly worried what statement might tick her off. When they were kids in her orbit, things were fine as she controlled them, and that made her feel that she was the center of attention. Now they're married and have families of their own, and because she's not the anchor of the family, she started becoming more and more demeaning, that we perform some elaborate rituals to make her feel special. That's extremely exhausting. So on to the actual event itself. Mother-in-law and father-in-law have traveled to our country and are staying with us for a short time to help with the kids, as we all live halfway across the globe. My wife planned an elaborate Mother's Day event centered around mother-in-law, even though she herself is a mom too. This included lunch in a popular ethnic cuisine restaurant. By the way, had she not planned it herself, there will be a snarky comment at the end of the day saying, "Seems you don't care about your mom enough to plan something for me. I was waiting the whole day for you to do something." Anyway, morning went uneventful as we had been pampering the grown-up toddler, and mother-in-law was quite jubilant. We go to the restaurant, and I and our eldest one go in to set up the table as my wife is bringing the others, mother-in-law, father-in-law, and our little one. My 2-year-old, the real toddler, decides to throw a tantrum for toddler reasons, but then mother-in-law sees this beautiful garden in front of the restaurant and wants my wife to take her pic. Mother-in-law doesn't care about anything and forces my wife to take several pics as my wife is holding a crying, fussing, and kicking toddler in her hip. Having basked in the glory of being in the center of attention, mother-in-law is satisfied enough. They all come inside. My wife is ticked from the events, but tries her best to be cheerful. Waiter comes in to take the order, and right then mother-in-law decides to go to the restroom. My wife asks her to order before going, as the kids will get hangry if we wait too long. Big mistake my wife did was she asked in a normal tone, a regular conversational tone, instead of a pleading or a pleasing pampering tone. How dare we order her royalty on what to do? That was strike one. As me and my wife are looking at the bazillion choices and trying to order for our kids, ourselves, our spice level, etc., we got absorbed into ordering without paying attention to the most important person. Mother-in-law wasn't the center of attention for 2 full minutes. How dare we? That's strike 2. We don't notice that and ask her what she wants. She asks if they have a particular ethnic dish, which is a regular staple we have almost every day at home, like a grilled cheese. That too in an indifferent, meek tone. She was indirectly implying that she's just a nobody because of strikes 1 and 2, so she's ordering some peasant food. That was our cue to realize our mistake and beg her forgiveness and bring the world back into alignment before things go downhill. We fail to notice that change in tone, which is strike 3. Instead, my wife suggests, "Mom, we have that almost every day at home, so why don't you—" Mother-in-law cuts her off saying, "I know that. Are you saying I don't know that?" and storms off to the restroom. Wow, she sounds exhausting. We're all figuring out what just happened and we finish ordering. Mother-in-law comes back and unloads onto my wife about how she just disrespected her. We brought her to this country, and even since then, my wife has made it her mission to do nothing but continuously humiliate her, and mother-in-law starts crying. I quickly realized what had conspired, but my innocent wife, whose heart is only filled with love and not such evil games, doesn't realize drama my mother-in-law wants. Instead, she's trying to understand how suggesting that the dish is a regular staple at home is humiliating, and mother-in-law goes, "You are implying I'm dumb and don't even know this. You have ruined my Mother's Day. All daughters do special things on the Mother's Day, and here you are ruining mine." And a few other ridiculous quotes. My wife says again and again, "That's just a regular thing to say to your mom." But mother-in-law is adamant that my wife humiliated her by implying she's dumb for not knowing it's a staple dish we regularly eat at home, and storms off to sit outside. Seriously, that was the entire discussion for a full 5 minutes. It was extremely bizarre to see a 60-year-old woman throwing a tantrum and accusing her daughter because she said it's a regular staple we eat at home. Normally, we would run after her, apologize, and beg her to come back, and keep apologizing throughout the lunch, which is what she wanted after 3 strikes. But this time, we were so over this BS, having been through similar things so many times. We just sat and ate in peace without an extra side of drama. But my wife was heartbroken. She does all this planning, wanted to be a good daughter, wanted her mom to feel special, and in the end has ruined her Mother's Day by talking to her mom as a mom and not as a royalty? So a 60-year-old woman started crying in the middle of a lunch rush in a popular restaurant, all because we didn't give her attention for 5 minutes while we were busy ordering food for our kids. There are hundreds of such stories, but this is one of the clearest. What the heck just happened? My daughter demands I raise her babies, but I want to retire in peace. I, 58 female, and my husband, Rob, who's 61, have 2 kids, Erica, who's 35, and Mike, who's 30. Both kids are married, but Erica and her husband, Steve, who's 38, live nearby us, and this issue concerns them. They work full-time and they have 2 kids who are 5 and 4 years old. 5 years ago, my daughter asked my husband and me if we would be willing to become their full-time childcare so she could continue to work and afford their comfortable life. We agreed, but we didn't discuss much more than watching the baby and their expectations. I was a teacher and retired 2 years before I could take my pension, so my husband continued to work, and we made a few sacrifices like vacations and adding to our savings, but we were able to make it work so I could take my full pension at 55 and my husband retired a year later. Our arrangement worked and we enjoyed having the kids, except by year 3, 2020, we started to feel like they were taking advantage of our help. In 2020, during the lockdown, they both were working from home. They expected us to keep the kids all day, and we wanted to split time with them since their preschool and daycare was closed. We settled on 2 with them and 3 with us, and my son-in-law complained about it pretty much every day. Things got better when the kids were able to go back to school. Fast forward to year 4, 2021, we have a bit of a blow-up over kindergarten. My daughter did not want her 5-year-old son to start school in the unknown, but I insisted that he needed to go because I needed the break. I also asked for her 4-year-old to spend more time at the preschool and daycare program. Son-in-law complained about the cost, but I pushed anyway. They relented, and then this past spring, son-in-law pushed for us to take the kids for a week so they could go on a vacation. We said they had to take the kids, and he said, "We can't afford it." No one went on vacation. Maybe that's too much background, but I feel like the context is important for what I said. My daughter and I were casually having a conversation the other day, and she mentions that she had a doctor's appointment and tests. I asked if everything was okay, and she said Steve and her were trying for baby number 3. I asked her what her childcare plan was, and she looked at me like I was crazy and said us. I said that it would have been nice if she had told me this before trying for another baby. She said it's none of my business. I said it is if I'm providing 5 more years of babysitting. I then told her that we were not a viable childcare option for a new baby and begged her to reconsider. Her 4-year-old is going off to kindergarten. We feel like we're getting our days back to some extent and refuse to start all over again with an infant. Erica said we are making her choose between her dream of having 3 kids and financial stability. I argued that she has 2 beautiful kids already and they are financially stable. They shouldn't ruin that with another baby. I might be the jerk because Erica feels like we should have told her sooner. I feel like I'm not because I never agreed to a lifetime of raising their kids. Edit. We will continue to watch our 2 grandkids after school and during this summer as this is what we have agreed to and we enjoy it. School provides a nice break for us and then we do fun things with the kids in the summer. We just don't want to start over again with another baby. Edit 2. Just to add a bit more context, and I want to answer some of the comments I'm seeing a lot. We are not paid and we didn't ask to be. I retired early, but would have stayed longer if we didn't watch our grandkids. I probably would have put in another 5 years or so, because I loved my job, so putting those 5 years into helping my daughter and grandkids wasn't a problem. My husband and I did a good job of preparing for retirement and felt that we could swing it. We do take time for ourselves. We require 5 weeks a year at a minimum to travel, visit our son or other family. We settled on 5 because our daughter gets 3 weeks of vacation a year and son-in-law gets 2. At first, son-in-law complained that him and my daughter would never get a vacation together. We said that they would just simply have to arrange other care options if they want time together, so we could still have our 5 weeks. We do hold them to this, and one time in the past 5 years, his parents came down to stay with them and watch the kids during that week we were away. In terms of telling her to not have another baby, I was trying to make her see everything she does have and to focus less on what she doesn't have. Lastly, my daughter and son-in-law have plenty of money and are responsible when it comes to costs. If anything, my son-in-law is cheap, so I think their version of stability and many others would be very different. Karen lets her cat roam the neighborhood, so I had him neutered. I run a TNR program for feral cats. Nonprofit, I catch all cats, then I get them the medical attention that they need myself out of my own pocket. I love helping them. A lot of the cats are not able to be rehomed, so I fix them and release them. Get them their shots and hope for the best. I'm not a large-scale operation. Recently, I was called to an area overrun with orange cats. They were everywhere, and I mostly ended up handing it over to the professionals. I did, however, manage to grab 3 very sweet cats. 2 were terrified, skinny, looked like they had seen a few fights, but were overall friendly. The third one was a little gent. He was tubby, well-groomed, fish-patterned collar, the works. My plan was to find his parents and drop him off with a warning to keep him in due to the large amount of traps being set. Then the little guy sprayed the inside of my card to the max. So apparently he wasn't fixed. I couldn't really tell, long hair, and assumed he was, so I left my covers off. Big mistake. I debated taking him home or taking him to get neutered with the rest. He was an indoor/outdoor cat, indicated by his collar tag, and with so many strays, I'm certain some were carrying his genetics. Ultimately, I took him with me and got him neutered. No chip, so I called the number on his tag and informed them where their cat was and gave them time slots to pick him up or to have him dropped off. The owners went ballistic. They were going off on me and came to collect their cat not 20 minutes later. They called me a cat thief, blamed me for their kid having nightmares, scared over their cat going missing. I tried to explain that he needed to be fixed if he was going to be outside, but they didn't want to know. They said I should have called immediately, regardless. I spoke to my rescue friend who said I was in the wrong. Even though we know we're technically in the right, we didn't have the legal ground to do that, and it wasn't my decision to make. I did apologize, but I have blocked their numbers. The mom is flaming me on Facebook and DMing people I know. I have a duty to take care of stray cats. Me knowing an unneutered male was roaming free and not doing anything about it was a concern for said stray cats. Things are still tense between my rescue buddy and I don't completely disagree. I know I crossed a line, even if it was for the greater good. People are finding out and taking sides, so I'm not sure who to really believe was right here. So, am I the jerk? You're the jerk. You did steal their cat, and you made a superbly arrogant decision to have him neutered without the owner's permission. You can judge them all you want for letting their cat outside, but the first thing you should have done was to call the cat's owners and ask, "Hey, I found your cat. Did you know he was outside?" That's the basic due diligence right here. How a vet decided to neuter the cat means you must have taken off the collar and obscured the owner's information, or they would not have done it without your permission. You just made yourself very actionable legally. You don't know if they were planning to breed the cat and he just happened to get out. OP. I spoke to my vet. She's a TNR vet. She neuters and moves on. There was no address on the collar, so my vet said it was fine. I don't know if she tried to call the owners or not though. I personally don't condone the breeding of cats when we have so many dying, literally for homes. Not 3 weeks ago, I dropped off at least 30 kittens and a couple pregnant mamas at a rescue. Maybe 10 will be adopted. The rest will be put down. It's horrible. I don't really care if they had plans to breed, truthfully. Well, then you shouldn't care if they sue you, I guess, since you feel you're completely in the right and justified, right? I understand that the cat overpopulation problem is horrible. I'm a cat owner myself. My problem is that you stole someone else's pet. There is zero justification for that. And if the vet is that careless, they're leaving themselves open to being sued as well. You should have the burden of calling the owner before deciding to permanently alter their pet. Everyone sucks here. The owners for letting an intact pet outside unsupervised to breed, and you for having a surgical medical procedure done to an animal that you knew had owners without the owner's permission. Regardless of the morality of allowing pets to contribute to the stray population, for which the owner is a jerk, making medical decisions for someone else's pet makes you a massive jerk. Everyone sucks. A free-roaming cat is a feral cat. You're not the jerk. Thank you for your service. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the cat's owners? Please let us know. I know we're gonna lose some subscribers for this, but it needs to be said. If you're stupid enough to let your unneutered cat roam the neighborhood and have kittens everywhere that are all gonna be strays, you don't even deserve to have a pet. Don't add me. Am I the jerk for cooking while my roommate's girlfriend was here and offering her some? I, 21 male, am from the South. I grew up in New Orleans in Texas. My mom runs a catering business and the majority of clients were either at home in Louisiana or in Texas. I add this to say that I grew up cooking and helping my mom cook for the business. I was frying chicken and catfish when I could reach the stove and making gumbo and buttermilk biscuits at a very young age. I'm currently in culinary school right now. I've lived in a rented house on the East Coast with my roommate, 22 male, for a year and a half. He's not a friend or anything, we just linked up because we both needed roommates in the area. He's good to live with and we watch shows and movies together. We hang out and go out for drinks sometimes. I always make friends easy because of being from the South and doing customer service related things when I was a kid. I know how to talk and charm and listen to folks despite being naturally more of an introverted person. My roommate has been seeing his girlfriend, who's 20, for 6 months. I've met her before and I've seen her in passing. Roommate and his girlfriend had a 2-week break from school things. She still lives at her parents', so she decided to stay here the whole 2 weeks. I was just doing things as I normally would. It got weird at first when I was about to go mow the lawn and the roommate stopped me and said he wanted to mow. I usually always mow. A couple of days later, I was outside washing my car. I asked both of them if they wanted to do theirs. She looked like she was going to agree, but he looked at her angrily, so they declined. I cook pretty frequently at home as well and usually let my roommate have some. So anytime I'd make some, I would say that they could have some and this would get him upset. Weeks prior, when she was here and we were all talking, she mentioned this specific kind of cheesecake that she really likes. So I made it and sent out a group text that everyone could have some. My roommate got upset. I don't see anything as overstepping a boundary, as this is how I treat him and all of our guests. The other day, he told me how annoying it was to hear his girlfriend talk about how good your roommate's fresh-baked bread is. I'm not trying to make him look bad or anything. This is simply how I was raised. If I bake 2 loaves of bread, I'm gonna leave it out for the rest of the house to eat. Edit. The cheesecake is just common courtesy type thing to me. When his parents came over, I made pound cake because they like it. If a guest is coming, you get or make what they like. Nothing odd about picking up their favorite chips or making some tea when guests arrive. Just how I was raised. Edit. Wow, this is blown up. Just want to say we generally have a good roommate relationship. We're not best friends, but it's friendly enough. The only change has been when his girlfriend is here. So, no, I'm not looking for new roommates to be adopted or to move out, but thanks. Here's some more things that upset him. I went to the grocery store and asked if anyone needed anything. I was frying chicken and I offered the first and best pieces to them straight out of the oil. I changed the oil to my own car. I used a smoker in the backyard to make brisket. I grill and smoke in the backyard and needed a piece of wood cut in a certain way to hold something up. I cut and nailed some wood together in the garage. Feels like I can't even exist while she's here. Update. A lot of people wanted an update. I wanted to see my roommate in the more positive light. I tend to try to see the best in people, but reading the replies and his recent actions have really opened my eyes. I never took him too seriously because he's a pretty harmless little guy in my perspective. There is a big difference in how he lashes out at me compared to his girlfriend. He's gotten big tough with me in text form, but only mildly upset when I see him in person. I have taken a step back and looked at anything I could have done to provoke him, not excusing his behavior. And while I don't believe I'm in the wrong for being hospitable and a hosting guest, if a 75-year-old man were staying with us, I would treat him the same as I've treated his girlfriend. I do realize that he's not from the South. I was told by others in school that women outside the South don't enjoy being called ma'am. However, I've never seen a lady get angry if I did call her ma'am up here. I call women of all ages dear or darling, and I could see how that could be seen as flirtatious, even though it's just part of how I speak. Now that he knows I've seen him in his true form, he doesn't even try to act the way he did before. I sent his girlfriend screenshots of the texts he sent and told her the things he said. I'm not sure if she's leaving or staying, but I've let her know and told her to let me know if she needs any help. I don't plan on moving anytime soon, as I enjoy having room for a grill and a smoker and a garage. He told me he's looking for new places to live and will potentially go back to his parents. I make enough working at a restaurant to afford the rent alone. I would like more going into savings, but I'm not worried financially for the time being. I'm flattered and overwhelmed by all the positive replies. About 100 of you told me to thank my mom, so I sure will. I grew up working in hospitality with my mom and siblings. My dad is the one that instilled respect in me. He never felt emasculated, even when my mom's business ended up making more than he does. They just save their money from their jobs and go on vacation a lot. Final edit. I tend to see the good and the best in people, so I wasn't seeing him as being very insecure and was trying to look at this in a more positive light. But he just texted me and said that I greet his girlfriend in too kind of a way, and it's annoying that I say, "Be safe," when she leaves the house. I say this to him and everyone when they tell me that they're going somewhere. He sent me a long text detailing it's bad that I look her in the eyes when she's talking to me. Maybe it's time for a new roommate. Not the jerk. You are raising a bar he doesn't want raised by getting things done. He wants to pretend he's a better partner than he is. He also doesn't want you to highlight things he isn't interested in doing. In a way, you are unintentionally showing that he isn't the best partner material around. Keep doing as you are. He's being ridiculous. So he's okay with you feeding him, but has a problem when you offer to feed his girlfriend who just happens to be in the house? It's not like you only cook when she's there. Why? Is he afraid you're going to steal her with food? Is he afraid she's only hanging out with him because you feed her? Ask roommate what the problem is and then stop doing what he doesn't like. If that means not feeding her, then stop feeding him too. You sound like a great roommate. You mow and offer to wash their cars? Who does that? You're like Southern hospitality supersized. Would I be the jerk to expect my husband to accommodate a post-pregnancy confinement? So I, 30 female, am giving birth soon, and we have this thing where I'm from, which is basically post-pregnancy recovery. What we do is stay in bed and try to recover the physical and mental toll pregnancy did on our body. So I've moved to my husband's country, and it's not a widely done thing here apparently, and I've already taken 2 months off of work. I've talked to my husband about this, but he thinks it's very unnecessary, especially since I need someone to take care of me and the baby during the period. So here's why I think it's feasible. 1. We make really good money, so it's not going to make a big dent in our financial account. 2. I can just have my parents take care of me. 3. My company has really good employee benefits, so even if I take that extra month off, it will still be under parental leave. 4. My state has parental leave for guys too, so my husband can also stay home to spend more time with our daughter and me. But my husband was really against it, and I do want to acknowledge it might be very troublesome to extend my parents' visa. So would I be the jerk if I bring up the topic again? He's white and American with Irish descent if that matters. Edit. I tried talking about it before, but it was shut down, and I thought it was fine and I could go without one. But my pregnancy wasn't smooth after 6-month mark, and instead of natural birth, we are now going C-section, and a lot of stuff happened, especially within the last few weeks. So now I'm pretty adamant about getting this 1 extra month of rest. To clarify, when I say confinement, I don't mean actually just staying in the bed. Of course I can actually move around, and yoga is probably going to be in my routine. But confinement as in I avoid going out, I avoid doing strenuous activity, and to rest more. And yes, per my doctor's recommendations, she wants me to rest for at least a month. Hi, husband here. Would like to say this has opened up my viewpoint. Was fed with a very skewed version of childbirth. We will be keeping discussions private from here. Thank you for the inputs. Update. I'm doing the confinement. My parents will come over, but will be living in hotels until the 3rd week after my delivery, since my husband will be overseas. I appreciate all of your comments and concerns. My parents will be meeting their grandkiddos. Also, for clarification, my parents aren't here yet. I meant extend visa as in the usual visa only allows 30 days. We're trying to extend it to those short-term stay visa. Not the jerk. When your husband actually delivers, then he'll have a say. Unfortunately, he's not delivering on being a supportive spouse to his pregnant wife. Not the jerk. America is the most backwards when it comes to maternal care, and your husband is a product of that culture. What they, and everywhere, should do is more like what you're used to from home. When you've grown an entire human, then pushed it out at great pain and potentially lifetime difficulties, you deserve to rest as much as you feel you need. That time should be just you and the baby getting to know each other and your new routines. Do what you need to do, mama. You have earned it. Am I the jerk for eating a prepped meal in my car before going into a restaurant with my girlfriend because of my strict diet? Over the last couple of years, I've lost nearly 80 pounds through extreme dedication to dieting and exercise. It's been a life-changing journey for me. The journey started when my doctors warned me about my poor cardiovascular health because of my unhealthy eating habits and lifestyle. With 30 right around the corner, I couldn't keep being the man I was before. It was a significant wake-up call. I tried immediately just focusing on going hard in the gym, but I tried lifting weights without eating properly and pretty much fried my CNS during deadlifts, causing me to pass out at the gym. It really scared me. Since then, I've taken my health incredibly seriously. I prep all of my meals, and they're calculated to meet my nutritional needs for the day and keep a caloric deficit to have me on track for losing weight. I've avoided going out to eat at all costs, as it feels like a slippery slope back into my old habits. For me, restaurants are like relapsing. One bite of a cheesesteak egg roll, and I'm buying Oreos on the way home and falling off the wagon. My girlfriend has been supportive of my health journey, but hasn't joined me. She still cooks and eats as she did before, which is a lot of food covered in fats and sugars with a lot of calories. I appreciate her cooking, but I can't eat most of the meals that she makes. It's been a bit of a strain on our relationship, but we've managed. So, boom. The conflict arose on our anniversary last month. She wanted to go out to a fancy restaurant to celebrate, and I wanted to make the night special as well, and I agreed to go. I even made sure I had calories left over to have drinks with her. However, I didn't want to break my diet and decided to bring a prepped meal to eat in the car before we went in. She discovered what I was doing and got really upset. She called me a jerk for not putting aside my diet for one night, saying I cared more about my food intake than about our special day. She said that I was being selfish and that I should have been more considerate of her feelings since it's our anniversary. I feel conflicted. On one hand, I understand where she's coming from, and I didn't mean to upset her. On the other hand, I've worked really hard to improve my health, and I'm scared of falling back into my old habits. Am I the jerk for sticking to my diet, even on our anniversary? Edit. I'm 5'4" and 297 pounds currently. Sorry, but you're the jerk. This is your responsibility to address, man. You have an extremely unhealthy relationship with food you need to work on, probably with a professional. I get this started for the right reasons, but you have wildly overcorrected, and it seems like you're pretty firmly in disorder territory. Your significant other has been supportive and literally wanted one dinner out with you for your anniversary. You shouldn't be in a relationship if you can't do this for her. It's the bare minimum stuff. Your mental health is important, so take care of it. I hope you do, because what you're describing is not sustainable or normal, and it won't end well. Edit. Please stop flooding this post with your ignorant straw man arguments that this is equivalent to asking an alcoholic or an addict to indulge in their vice. It is simply not comparable. You're not blowing anybody's mind, and you're not coming across as some intelligent maverick. Food is necessary to live. Food is not good or evil. For alcoholics and addicts, the only true solution to healing is abstinence. This is not the case with food. You need to eat, and OP's obsession with control over his diet is simply not sustainable. It's not normal or okay to not be able to eat at a restaurant for one singular meal. Kudos to him for making the change, but he's gone too far when it has affected his life to this degree. He needs legitimate help if he can't relinquish control of his food intake enough to enjoy a single meal for a special occasion at a restaurant, which could be healthy, without fear of spiraling into a binge-eating hole where he loses all sense of self and eats himself into oblivion. He promised his significant other a date night at a restaurant, and he shocked her with a brown bag meal in front of the restaurant so he could watch her eat and drink a cocktail. This is not okay behavior as a partner, which is why he is the jerk. If he can't handle that, he should be single. Stop with the ridiculous comparisons to her asking him to drink as an alcoholic. You are so wildly off base it's embarrassing. Believe it or not, an eating disorder is harmful even if you're overweight. Nobody thinks you're some shredded Greek god for thinking otherwise. You're the jerk to yourself more than anything. You have an extremely unhealthy relationship with food. You think your diet is helping you, but it sounds more like you have a problem. One nice meal and years of taking care of yourself will not disrupt your diet. If it would, then you are very unhealthy mentally. Do you go to a therapist or a dietitian? I hear you, but you're the jerk. I lost 60 pounds myself this year and plan on more, so I do understand your dedication and the strict calorie counting. However, special days are special for a reason. Let's say the entire meal with a drink came to 3,500 calories. You and I both know that's equivalent to 1 pound of body fat. Those calories might set you back and take 2 weeks to get back on track, but it's worth it to avoid this. Sorry, but you're the jerk here. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. OP set a goal, and now he's staying dedicated to that goal to accomplish it. He's not letting anything knock him off of his path, and he's continuing to succeed. I'm not surprised in the least that the people on Reddit are knocking him for that. Am I the jerk for sending our son away after he revealed to his sister's friends that she has dentures? My husband and I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son. When our daughter was 8, she developed a very rare mouth infection that just absolutely devastated her teeth and gums. She ended up losing all of her teeth in both sets and had to have some corrective work done just so she could have regular dentures. Obviously, this was a horrible time for her, and she's still in therapy to help cope to this day. Our daughter is understandably very self-conscious about this. None of her friends knew about them. In fact, nobody besides her doctor and dentist know outside of the family. She doesn't want people to know. She's very worried about people finding out and won't even take her teeth out in front of us. She's worried someone will see. Her and her brother had a good relationship until he did what he did last week. He somehow recorded her taking out her teeth without her noticing and then showed all of her friends when they were over. Not only have they all turned on her, but half the school is teasing her nonstop. She even had to change her phone number because dozens of kids were texting her the most vile things imaginable. I've never been more ashamed of one of my kids until that moment. I don't know where we went wrong raising him, but apparently he thought it would be funny. After I kicked out her friends who were mocking her and helped her through a panic attack, I called my father to pick him up and told him to pack a bag and get out. He's been staying with my parents 2 towns over. They didn't know what happened until 2 days ago. That came up because driving him to school was becoming a hassle and they wanted to know what was up. When I explained, they were disgusted, but still wanted to know when they could bring him home. I asked them if they'd take care of registering him for school in their town, and they agreed, but were shocked. My husband and I talked, and we just cannot have him here. His sister hates him. We're so ashamed we can't even think of calling him. It sounds awful, but I don't think our relationship can recover from this, and maybe this is what he needs. No friends, no family, aside from his grandparents, having to start over might just set him straight. My parents are willing to keep him until he's 18, but I think we're too emotionally charged to be making this decision now. What he did was vile, and he deserves a harsh punishment for what he did. However, I don't think the punishment issued fits the crime. You can't just throw your son away, and you can come back from this. It will take a lot of therapy for all of you, but it can happen. I honestly don't know how to judge this post though. Everyone sucks here. I love that you have your daughter's back and apply serious consequences for your son. What I don't love is that you didn't mention how he reacted to the aftermath of what he has done and the consequences. I also think it's an overreaction to permanently disown your son and cut him out from your life. He's still your son. Yes, terrible mistake, but still a minor and still your son. You should be working with him and not just being like this. So yes, let him live with his grandparents, but work on a way to rebuild your own, not your daughter's, relationship with him. Call. Let him do volunteer work. Something. Am I the jerk for telling my sister she's inconsiderate for only providing vegan options at our wedding? I, 30 female, and my sister, who's 32, have an okay relationship. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. She met a guy named Riley, who's 33, and they hit it off so well that he proposed to her 3 months after they started dating. Our parents thought it was too soon, but they left them alone because they're grown and can make their own decisions. Anyway, my sister and Riley have decided to go vegan. Cool, I don't really care. Only issue I have is that they tried to incorporate it into nearly every conversation we have. They have somewhat boring personalities, so I guess they needed something to make their personality about, but it's okay. I was invited to their wedding, and not gonna lie, I had to think about it for a bit because I'm not too big on social gatherings, but it was my sister, so I decided to go. At the wedding, I had a fairly good time. Wasn't too bad. Got to talk to some new people and get out of my comfort zone a bit. The fun came to a complete stop when it was time to eat though. All the food was vegan. Things like bread, tofu salad. I don't even know, man. I wasn't the only one confused, but the guests still dug in. I wasn't a fan though. I confronted my sister and Riley and asked what was up with all the vegan food. They said they wanted to present a different lifestyle to the guests and joked about steering them away from meat. I was pretty disgusted, not gonna lie. That sounded rude. I snapped back and said, if I did the same thing to you guys but with meat, how would you react? Stop being so inconsiderate and learn to cater to your guests. She told me if I had a problem with it, then, the door is to your left, and you don't need to look back. I laughed and said there was no way she was kicking me out over calling them out. She shrugged, then walked away. Riley called me entitled and said I ruined what was supposed to be a special day. I sighed and left. That same night, I got a phone call from my dad that my sister was in tears. He told me I should have acted my age and focused on my sister and her new husband, not the food. My mom also texted me that my behavior was shameful and that I wasn't raised to be judgmental of people's life choices. I immediately felt bad. I kept thinking about it. I couldn't sleep at night because I kept replaying the confrontation in my head. I was just sick of all this vegan crap being forced on me, and I was hangry. Am I the jerk? Edit. Wow, I don't eat meat every single day. I was just hungry and in the mood for some that day. And when I saw the food and it was all vegan and it looked like crap, I noped out. Yeah, I could have reacted better, but I'm tired of them always talking about being vegan and telling me I should try it out. You're the jerk. Are you sure you're 30? This post reads like a young teenager wrote it. Your behavior also is more akin to a young teen than a fully grown adult. It's their wedding. They can serve whatever food they please at their wedding. You were also very dismissive of the whole thing before you even got there, acting like some kind of martyr because you deigned to attend your sister's wedding. You couldn't just suck up your crappy attitude for one day. You're the jerk. Vegans and vegetarians cannot eat meat. You made a false equivalency. You serving me this food I don't like is the same as if I served you food you can't eat. Am I the jerk for telling my parents I won't get a part-time job? I'm 16, male. My parents recently have been telling me to start making my own money to pay for unneeded stuff, like expensive clothes and nights out with friends, which, fair enough. They told me to get a traditional part-time job, working at a store or a restaurant or babysitting or whatever. I decided those sounded time-consuming and boring, so I decided to utilize my good taste in clothes to make money in a more hands-off way. I used money I have already, remnants of birthday money mostly, to go to a thrift store and buy clothes I knew would be in trend right now and then sell them, either online or to people I know, then withdraw some of the money for personal spending and put most back towards buying more stuff. This is optimal because now, as of a month after starting, I'm making pretty good money for very little work. 1 to 2 hours every weekend at the thrift store, then another 1 to 2 hours to pose for photos modeling the clothes and post them online. And even that little amount of work is something I find fun. So all in all, seems better than working longer hours at something I'd find boring for similar pay. My parents are angry because I took what was supposed to be a teachable moment about hard work and just ruined it by finding a way to make money that's not hard work at all. They demand in order for me to learn about hard work, I quit this and get an actual part-time job. I see no logical reason to. As I said, what I have going is quicker and much more enjoyable than a part-time job for similar amounts of money earned. To put it simply, why would I work more hours doing something I like less just for the same amount of money? Sounds irrational, right? They think I'm the jerk and being lazy here. I agree that there's a certain amount of laziness involved, but if my system works, it works. Am I the jerk? I don't think anyone is the jerk here. As a parent, I can see why they would want you to get a more traditional job. Usually side gigs like this aren't great in the long run, and it's hard to stay on top of an ever-turning trend market. A regular part-time job for a teen generally teaches responsibility, how to interact with people, time management, punctuality, etc. I think it's great that you found a way to make money doing something you like. Your teen years are supposed to be the time where you learn who you are, have fun, make memories, etc. My parents wanted me to focus on this and school rather than working. If I wanted money for something that wasn't a necessity, for example, dance tickets, I'd earn it by doing chores around the house, babysitting, etc. It's not irrational. A little lazy, yes. You are doing work and learning responsibility, so I would just try to let it go for now. Everyone sucks here. Your parents told you that you needed to earn your own money, so you did. They don't get to tell you you're doing it wrong simply because you didn't do it the same way that they would. But I'd also implore you to do some reading about what upselling thrifted items is doing to the secondhand industry. You're essentially taking trendy items out of the hands of people who otherwise couldn't afford them, and the influx of people like you is driving up prices at thrift stores and pricing out the people who truly need them. So unfortunately, your money-making scheme is lazy and comes with some real-world consequences. You're the jerk. Thrift stores are there to provide cheap clothes for people, whether for them to find a more sustainable way to shop or for those who need it because they don't have much money. You're taking advantage of that to sell clothes that were donated. Those clothes are meant to be cheap, not resold so you can make money without effort. I've worked at thrift stores since the 2000s. I don't think you're aware of who actually shops there. Yes, there are people who haven't got a lot of money and have no other affordable choices, but they're the minority of thrift shoppers. No one is missing out. Not only has shopping at thrift stores become very trendy for the past several decades, we get a megaton of clothes constantly. It's where you can find amazing stuff from vintage fashion to affordable leather jackets. We get so many clothes that the stuff that doesn't sell within a month gets thrown into a giant bale maker, and the bales are sent off to other countries. It breaks my heart because really cool and cute clothes get thrown in, and the baler is often brutal and will ruin them. But what can we do? More mountains of clothes are on the way. Thrift stores aren't exclusively for the poor or exist as a charity alone. They are resellers. They have too much cool stuff every month to sell it all. Everyone, please come and get it before I start weeping by the baler again. Karen stops me mid-workout and demands to use the squat rack. This is becoming more and more common at the surrounding gyms, which is really annoying and a reason I've changed gyms more than once this year alone. Working out is a pillar of my everyday life, and it has been for the past 10 years, and I'm at the gym every day of the week. Now, I don't go to the gym to talk to people, make friends, or make funny videos. I go to train and go home. However, now with the new video trends, many folks want to record their exercises to post on social media. This is their business and not mine. They can do whatever they want, but I also don't think I need to stop doing my own workout to accommodate them. Last night I was doing squats on the Smith machine. I work out with headphones and I didn't notice that someone was trying to get my attention. I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder mid-squat, and only then I noticed a woman with a very annoyed expression. She barely allowed me to finish the movement to start talking, which was muffled due to headphones. Long story short, she was annoyed because I was training on the Smith machine and she wanted to record herself doing regular squats. However, she said the best spot was in front of that Smith machine. There's more than one, and she didn't want me on the frame. So she wanted me to stop my series for her to record. Now, usually if someone comes to me with a good attitude and asks if it's okay for me to stop for a series or two for them to record or even move machines, I would absolutely not mind and comply. This lady did nothing of the sort, being extremely arrogant and honestly extremely annoying. So I was petty and I told her to record once I was done, and I proceeded to do every single exercise I could on the same Smith machine. Squats, Smith. Hip thrust, Smith. It was petty and I know I shouldn't have done it, but I felt very vindicated seeing her annoying expression. That being said, a few people said I was a jerk for doing that, as there were other machines I could have used. Honestly, they might be right, but hey, I thought I'd ask the internet. Was I too much of a jerk here? Not the jerk. First off, who interrupts someone mid-squat? A lot of gyms have a no recording policy where I live. In my last gym, these people just got reported to the fitness manager. Not the jerk. For all those people trying to film themselves in a public place, get over yourselves. We don't care about your 1,327 followers seeing your gains. Stop disrupting public space with your ego. Well, what would you have done in this situation? Would you have gone ahead and moved for her or not? Please let us know. I would have started coughing all over her. It's one of the quickest ways to get people to stop messing with you, especially these days. My Karen mother-in-law destroyed my backyard, gets taught a lesson. To provide some background, my mother-in-law lives in the basement suite of our house, and despite our language barrier, it hasn't caused any major issues. She takes care of our 4-year-old and 2-year-old while my wife and I are at work. One day, I noticed that my 4-year-old son was unable to drive his ride-on car onto the patio because there was a 2-inch gap between the patio and the yard. Instead of having him drive the car clockwise onto the yard, where he could easily reach the patio, my mother-in-law decided to pile up soil and gravel on the grass to create a ramp. I still can't understand the logic behind her decision. I take great pride in maintaining my yard. I prefer having a beautiful, soft, and even grassy area for my kids to play on, rather than a dry, patchy stretch of dust. My mother-in-law is well aware of this, and she knows how much effort I put into it. Last year, she made sure to tell me that it was my wife, not her, who accidentally burned a patch of grass while trying to deal with ants using boiling water. However, this year, without my notice, she piled up soil and gravel in a section of my backyard early in the spring. When it was time for me to start my annual yard work, which includes trimming hedges, killing weeds, mowing, reseeding, and fertilizing, I discovered the damage. The grass was gone, the soil was tightly packed like concrete, and loose gravel was scattered all over the yard, posing a hazard for my mower, which now has a chewed-up blade. It took me the entire afternoon to dig out, loosen, and level the soil. I also had to collect all of the gravel and use an entire 5-kilogram, 11-pound bag of lawn patch for the repairs, mulch, seed, and fertilizer. It will be late into the summer before the yard begins to regain its lush appearance. Today, after a light rainfall overnight, I was checking if the yard needed watering when my mother-in-law stormed out, insisting that the pile of soil and gravel had to remain there for my son. I lost my temper and gestured angrily to show her that he could still drive his car by simply going clockwise around the yard and through the patio. She stormed back into the suite and later informed my wife that if I didn't like how she babysat the kids, I could take care of them myself, even though I already do, and she only helps when I'm working. I struggle to understand the logic here, since the issue wasn't about her ability to supervise the kids, but rather the destruction of my yard, just to avoid changing the direction of my son's car. Unfortunately, my wife has taken her mother's side and argues that she has the right to do whatever she wants with our property. Am I the jerk for repairing the damage my mother-in-law caused to my yard? Update: the character limit prevented me from explaining that this was not an isolated incident. My mother-in-law has caused permanent damage to the yard on multiple occasions without even mentioning it, including creating a hole in the line of cedars that surrounds the yard for privacy because she decided they should look like the neighbor's pine trees, not cedars. I caught her after she had already done one. Pruning a large spherical hedge into a mushroom shape so she wouldn't have to duck under the branches or walk around it. Ripping out decorative ivy from a large flower garden in the front yard to turn it into a vegetable garden, because apparently the 7x20 vegetable garden in the backyard wasn't enough. She repeatedly shows she doesn't care what we're doing with our yard. Additionally, I'm not mad about the extra work. I'm mad that she felt she was in a position to chew me out for undoing the work she did, undoing the work I did. Here's where I say that you don't have a mother-in-law problem, you have a wife problem. Your mother-in-law made changes, your wife was happy with them, and you changed it back. No communication. I'm going to say everyone sucks here. Just making changes without talking to someone is low-level, petty, passive-aggressive crap. Everyone sucks here. Firstly, you obviously don't spend that much time in the garden if you don't notice for weeks or months. Your mother-in-law should have absolutely asked before changing anything. Why didn't you make him a temporary wooden ramp? There's more than one way to fix a problem. You say you take pride in your yard, but then you say you didn't go out there until early spring. Pick a story and stick with it. You're the jerk. You didn't notice for months, and now it's a problem because the grass doesn't go right to the patio? Take advantage of the excuse to get rid of the rest of the crap and plant some real plants. At best, this is everyone sucks here, because she really could have asked. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his mother-in-law? Please let us know. Something tells me these bozos leaving the comments don't know a thing about lawn care. Something tells me they don't know a thing about anything. Now let's keep this rockin' so we can finish up and go spread our fertilizer. Am I the jerk for returning a birthday gift I got from my boyfriend after he insulted me about my colorful past? This happened last night, but my phone is still blowing up. I, female 26, dipped into my savings and got Mike, my boyfriend who's 27, a PS5 for his birthday yesterday. He knew he was getting the PS5 because he told me that the PS5 is the only thing he wants. We've been together for 4 years, so the cost didn't matter. That is, until I found out what he thinks about me. Some background. When I was 18, I was involved with Jake, a guy who I met online. We ended things after 3 months, and I moved on shortly after with Adam, a guy from work. I found out a couple months later that Jake and Adam were actually really close friends, but I didn't know Jake long enough to meet his friend group, so I had no idea. After finding out, I took some time off dating, and 2 years later, I met my current boyfriend, Mike. I was upfront and honest with Mike about my past and the fact that I was unintentionally involved with friends. He said he understood and my past didn't bother him. Last night at his party, I showed up with the PS5 and him and his friends were screaming with joy. His best female friend, Jessica, laughed and said, "I wish I got around so I could afford a PS5 too." I looked at her with an "excuse me" look on my face and she just said, "Never mind," and walked away. I confronted my boyfriend about it and he said, and I quote, She's just messing with you. You can't take a joke? So I pushed further as to why this girl is even calling me names to begin with, and he said, well, everyone knows you got around before you met me. I asked him to explain how so, and he said, you know, messing with best friends? He then pat me on the shoulder and said, that's okay, because you're not the same person you were back then, and I can get over your colorful past and your mentalities. And if I can give you another chance, you can get over Jessica's comments. I didn't say anything. I just got up, took the PS5 from the gift table, and I left. He was ticked off. He literally called me 20 times, but I didn't care. I was so hurt that I took off the bow and I took it straight back to the store that I got it from. They happily refunded me. I thought that was done, but Mike and all of his friends, including Jessica, are going off on me for being petty, and they're all saying I brought this on myself by making poor choices. I responded to Mike and told him that he deserves better than me, so go find someone without a past like mine and get the PS5 from them because I returned it. He started screaming how I'm the biggest jerk for returning it and how I should be happy he ignored my colorful past. I'm thinking maybe I took it too far. Am I the jerk? I'm so confused, but maybe that's because I'm an old lady who got married around the time you were in kindergarten. A. If anyone was wrong in the Jake and Adam incident, it was Adam. You might have dated friends, but he dated his best friend's ex. That's on them to figure out, and Adam's mistake only. 2. Where I come from, dating 3 dudes in 7 years does not mean a colorful past. Not the jerk, and I hope you do something special for yourself with a little of that money you got back from returning that gift you got for your ex-boyfriend. Not the jerk. Nothing about your past is even colorful. OMG, you dated 2 guys that happened to be friends. Good heavens, where are my pearls? I must clutch them. Sounds like Jessica is either getting with this guy or she wants to. She can have him. Use the money to get yourself something nice. Your past isn't colorful. You haven't done anything wrong. There's no need for you to feel badly about who you dated, and frankly, it's no one else's business. The fact that your boyfriend not only judged you, but also shared his judgment with his friends is inexcusable. You don't do hurtful things like that to people you care about. He wanted you to feel less than. You did the right thing. Now you need to find someone who deserves an amazing person like you. Don't settle for anything else. Definitely not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. I would have turned it around on them. Oh, I'm always open for an upgrade. Too bad all of your friends are even bigger betas than you are. Am I the jerk for banning my sister-in-law from my house over tomato sauce? I, 28 female, have an older brother who's 32 male. He's married to my sister-in-law who's 33. I get along with her well, except for this one point. If you don't keep an eye on her, she'll go into the kitchen and add seasonings to whatever is cooking. She thinks she's fixing stuff, but not all foods need turmeric in it. This Saturday, I received 40 pounds of tomatoes. It took me the whole weekend to turn it into a sauce that I was planning to can. I can it plain, then add whatever seasonings and herbs it needs, depending on the recipe. They came to take a bag of spare clothes for one of their kids, and in the 5 minutes it took me to get it, she managed to get into the kitchen, add salt, pepper, turmeric, olive oil, garlic powder, and Italian herbs to all 5 of the pots that were simmering on the stove. She shouldn't have done that, that's wrong. And when I asked her what she was doing, she had the audacity to say, "This sauce needed some taste. I added it for you." Like I've never told her to not touch what I was cooking before. I was so angry that I knew I couldn't be calm talking with her, so I simply walked to my brother, told him to take the clothes and his wife, and that she's no longer welcome in my house. She had followed me, was shocked, started apologizing, but I just ignored her. I added that he should come by tomorrow to take the sauce that his wife ruined, because otherwise it would be thrown away, and that I expected 40 pounds of replacement tomatoes. They left, he came back with the tomatoes, an apology letter from her, and an apology carrot cake, my favorite. But I told him that I stand by my decision. Now my parents got involved, since I'm the one that usually hosts, and since she's not allowed in my house, I told them to make alternate plans for Memorial Day. My husband says that I'm in the right, but my parents say that my reaction is way overblown. So, am I the jerk? Edit. Since there seems to be some confusion, I'm not planning to host for Memorial Day and not invite her. I said I'm not hosting. My parents or my brother should host, and I will attend as a guest. I might be angry, but I don't want her excluded. This is so boundary disrespecting, disrespectful, and insulting to what you're cooking. And it wasn't even for her. Not the jerk for being furious. I do think she's learned her lesson though. OP. She thinks we don't season enough. But here's the thing. If I'm making Indian or Chinese, I toast the spices and grind them with a mortar and pestle. My Ethiopian friend says that I make spicier food than her mom. But if I'm making mac and cheese, a burger, or mashed potatoes, of course I'm only using salt and pepper, because usually the flavors are in the sauce or gravy. Not the jerk. She's crossing boundaries, poking into something where she doesn't belong. It's all kinds of wrong to mess with someone else's cooking. What if you were making something for someone allergic to turmeric? Good on your brother for replacing the tomatoes and on her for apologizing. That said, you're still in the right for banning her from the house, especially if that's happened multiple times and you've been clear with her that it's not acceptable. If you're thinking about letting her back in, I'd make sure the apology is a real apology first. Not, "I'm sorry if your feelings were hurt," but something which takes responsibility for her actions. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend that his dream of becoming a successful streamer and content creator isn't going to work? I'm a tattoo artist and a piercer. I co-own and run a tattoo and piercing business with a friend, and I have many employees under me. We are open 6 days a week from 1 p.m. to midnight. 4 days are a regular appointment schedule, while the final 2 days of the week are walk-in days for people who want something faster than usual without having to set up a time. On top of setting up and closing the shop every day, I drive 45 minutes to work and then 45 minutes home each day. I get home past 3 a.m. almost every night, eat, and then sleep a few hours. We're busy constantly throughout the week. I only have 1 day off, and I usually end up spending it cleaning the house, cooking, or doing anything else that needs to be done. My boyfriend, on the other hand, is trying to become a successful Twitch streamer and YouTuber. He started around 4 years ago. He has a few dozen followers on both platforms and usually has around 2 to 5 viewers for each stream or video. It's gotten pretty bad in the past 2.5 years or so though. He streams while I'm at work, and that'll usually be an 11 to 13-hour stream a day, depending on what he does. His life revolves around content creation now. He wakes up to stream, then spends all day streaming a game, and then uploads it to YouTube. The other problem with it is that in the 4 years he's been doing this, he hasn't worked a single job. He's unemployed. Not one single donation or any monetary expense has come from his endeavor. He literally does nothing but stream. He quit his floor manager job at Walmart to become this. I've talked to him recently about maybe cutting down the hours on his streams so he has time to do stuff around the house, spend time with me, or better his health. He doesn't even eat unless I remind him when I get home late. It's literally hurting him. I also explained that maybe he should think about getting a new job so I'm not the only one paying all the bills or groceries. I'd like help of any kind. I can't do all this alone anymore. Each one of these talks has turned into a fight between us. He will get super defensive about it and tell me off. He tries to convince me that I don't understand his lifestyle and that I don't understand how hard it is to be a content creator. It's gotten more and more heated. He'll have a tantrum and go back to streaming to his community that supports him. The other day, I straight up told him his dream of being a successful streamer or content creator of any kind is never going to work out the way he thinks it will. He doesn't seem to understand that the hours he's putting in are doing more harm than good for us and him. He had another tantrum and promptly told me he wanted a break from the relationship. We aren't talking, and now he's doing nothing but the same usual routine. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. So during this break, is he still living with you? Because that's not really a break. I definitely recommend dumping him and never looking back. He acts like a kid, and you're his parents and responsible for paying for his food and shelter. Please date an adult next time. Your life will improve dramatically. Not the jerk. 4 years and still not being able to gain any monetary value from it? Sounds like a hobby to me. Hobbies don't pay the bills. Not the jerk. He's not your boyfriend, he's your dependent, and of the moody teenager variety from the sounds of it. Not the jerk. He's delusional and in dire need of a reality check. It's okay to support your boyfriend while he works at building his career, but this is not it. Not at all. It's leading him nowhere. Never waste your life with a leech who wants to use you and add nothing of value to your life. Am I the jerk for telling my sister she needs to pay for childcare or I'm not going to her wedding? I'm 25, female, and my sister, who's 28, her wedding is in a couple months. She recently sent out invitations. I was invited as a regular guest, not a bridesmaid or a maid of honor, since we live a state apart, and obviously there's a certain level of involvement and time that goes into bearing part of a bridal party, which I understand. I want to be there for my sister, and obviously I'd like to see her get married. But the problem is, I'm a single mom. My son is 6, and when he's not in school, I need to be home watching him. So being out for hours at a time isn't really in the cards for me right now. My sister's wedding is child-free. Since it's taking place in her state, I'd need to commute, and I'd probably have to be gone from my house for 2 full days. I can't have family watch my son since they'll all be at the wedding, and I don't really have friends who will babysit for 2 days. I contacted my sister and asked if she'd be willing to let my son come to the wedding with me and explained that he couldn't be left alone so young and that I didn't have anyone to watch him. She responded by telling me her no kids policy was strict and that she wouldn't make exceptions. I explained my situation again and said I'd need some form of childcare or to bring him with me. I then asked her if she would pay me to hire a nanny or a babysitter to watch him. She got offended and said, "Children and weddings are both parts of life, and you need to just figure it out. It's not my kid or my problem." Which, sure, that's true, but also her wedding, her making it a problem by not allowing me to bring my kid. I told her she could either pay me for my childcare or I wouldn't be going to her wedding, which all she did was call me ridiculous and entitled. She said she shouldn't have to pay for my kid and that part of being an adult is knowing how to take care of that kind of thing. I know that's ridiculous. Money is tight, childcare is expensive. I can't magically afford for someone to watch my 6-year-old, and most people would just let me bring him to the wedding. My sister says she's definitely not paying for childcare, and "I guess you're not going to the wedding then." My whole family is mad at me for not being there for my sister. Am I the jerk? Edit. I think some people are misunderstanding the post, so I'll make it more clear. I'm not trying to force my sister to pay for anything, and it's totally fine if I can't come. She accepts that, and I just don't go. It only became a problem when my entire family came after me for not going to the wedding. I'm not mad at my sister for not paying. I'm mad at her for turning the family against me and saying I don't want to attend her wedding, and complaining about me behind my back to my parents. She complained about me not going to the wedding as if I was purposely avoiding it. You're the jerk. I get where you're coming from, but you went about this all wrong. I'm sorry, but it's not within my budget to travel so far and also arrange to pay for my childcare when I get there. I send my best. Full stop. Don't ask for handouts from a stressed out bride. Is that what people do? If she's gracious, she or the family will offer a solution, but you don't ask for that. That's where the entitlement came from. In the end, the kid is your responsibility, no one else's. You're the jerk. It's no one else's responsibility to pay for your kids. Completely unreasonable ask. Asking a bride a state away, your sister of all people, to pay for childcare for a night or two so you can attend their special event is not unreasonable at all. Between sisters, like, "Hey sis, I can't afford this thing. Do you really want me there? If so, I have to ask, can you pay for the childcare so I can attend? Otherwise, I may just have to bow out." If the conversation went like this, and OP's sister reacted with her stress and psycho in the moment, it might be fine. But OP wasn't asking unreasonable things. This is across state lines, a travel wedding, and a sister who's not even a part of the wedding party. It didn't have to be a screaming match. It could have been, "Oh no sis, I can't pay for that with all the wedding expenses. I'm so sorry you can't come." Like, what planet are we living on that it's abnormal to ask a sister for help in a situation that they're being put in by their sister? What the heck? Aside from some tone issues, which I won't police, no jerks here. Your sister's position that it's her wedding, there's no kids, and as your kid's parent, you need to figure it out is totally valid. Your position that your parenting responsibilities come first, and that unless your sister can help out with childcare, you won't be able to attend is also valid. That's how you've figured it out. Not attending is a valid solution to this problem. That's the default solution to your situation. Anyone judging you for your parenting choices or your inability to afford childcare is a jerk. Am I the jerk for saying I'll be driving myself and paying for my own room on the upcoming family vacation so I won't have to be a babysitter? I, 23 male, was repeatedly stuck playing the part of helper and babysitter on family outings. I had to move out of my parents' house because I kept being forced to help watch my 3 nephews. Last year, we took a family vacation in summer to the coast. I rode along with my parents and they paid for my hotel room. Only I had to share that room with 3 rowdy boys because my sister and her husband wanted a room to themselves. I was promised time to do my own things on the vacation, but instead, I ended up having to help with these kids. I complained to everyone about it, and I was reminded I was there for free. And then we pretty much just did only one thing I wanted to do, which was tour an art gallery. I like doing this whenever I'm at the coast, but the kids find it boring. This year, my parents have a beach trip planned for June, and they assumed I'd be riding along the same way as last year. But I refused. I said I'd be driving myself and paying for my own hotel stay to have my own room. My parents were shocked and tried to remind me of the cost. I said it was expensive, but no worries. I've got a good job and a good decent running car. I can more than afford it. That's when the buts started. I stated the previously listed things as why I'll be driving myself and paying for myself. I want to be able to enjoy this vacation as an adult and not be treated like a kid like last year. My parents told my sister, and she called to blow up at me that I'll be ruining the vacation if I'm off doing my own thing while she has to wrangle her 3 kids. I ended up yelling at her that last year all she did was rope me into her mess. I didn't really get to do much of anything I wanted to do, and I was treated like the bad guy for wanting to just go to an art gallery. I'm a grown man. I deserve my own vacation too. Now my sister is not speaking to me, and my parents are still trying to convince me to just ride with them to keep the peace. I'm still refusing, but the pressure is getting to me. Am I the jerk for not giving in? I know they'll have a pretty hard time when they won't have another person there to help. Edit. It's barely been an hour since I posted, but my sister is apparently a Reddit lurker in the mornings and she saw my post. Not only is she furious with me, but she's also upset no one in the comments is siding with her. To make it short, she went on a big rant about how it's so hard to be a parent to triplets, and the least I could do is help because I'm young and single and she needs a break. I stood my ground on my decision, and now she's calling our parents to get them involved too. I'm expecting a call from them any minute. Update. Well, I'm off work now, so I can tell more of what went down. I guess you could say it's over. My sister got our parents involved, they looked at my post, and were absolutely horrified by the continuous influx of commenters. Yes, they're very angry with me that I posted here, but I told them that if they had just listened to me to begin with, I wouldn't have needed to. I'm sick of the whole keep the peace mentality that sacrifices me to placate my sister. They in turn went off on my sister, and to make a long story short, the whole vacation has been canceled. The hotel wasn't booked yet anyway, but my parents are arguing with my sister is blaming me, and my nephews are crying because they aren't going to the beach. My sister called me at lunch and basically implied I have no life, which is why I have time to help. I recorded that and told our parents, and that's currently what they're fighting about. I sincerely thank everyone here for all of the advice, but I don't think I'll need to update again. That's a laugh. She's admitting that she's ruining your vacation so as to not ruin her own. They're her kids and her responsibility, not the jerk. In fact, you're nicer than I would be. I'd just say, no thanks, I've got other plans, and avoid the family vacation altogether. Not the jerk, but if you're paying for yourself, go somewhere else on your own and make it a hard no to the babysitting. Am I the jerk for telling my parents I'm willing to sell them my forgiveness? My parents expected me to be independent the minute I turned 18. They gave me the money they had saved up for my education, and they started charging me rent. I was lucky enough to have a partial scholarship, and I found a job in the city my university was in, so I moved there before the school year began. With my parents' money, my scholarship, and my wages, I was able to scrape by. I rarely, if ever, spoke with my parents. I was kind of busy. I guess they decided that they didn't want that kind of relationship with my younger siblings because they were not presented with the same option. They both lived at home all through university and even afterwards. I'm 34 now with a decent job and a great girlfriend whom I will be marrying this summer. I sent my parents and siblings an invitation. They called me to ask why they were not involved in the wedding. I responded that they hadn't really been part of my life in 16 years and that I was being nice by inviting them. They said that they acknowledged that they made mistakes when I was young, but that was in the past and I should get over it. Against my fiance's advice, I sent them an itemized bill for everything I paid for myself that they freely gave my brother and sister. I said if they wanted to be a part of my life, they had to ante up. They said they can't afford that because they're still in debt from helping my siblings out. I laughed at that and said I hoped that I would see them at the wedding and hung up. My family are all getting a hold of me and letting me know how I'm hurting my parents. The thing is that I don't want their money, and I don't want anything from them at all other than their attendance at my wedding. If they can't do that, then I'm fine with our yearly phone call. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Maybe the itemized bill was a bit much, but I imagine it was cathartic for you. Your parents haven't really been around in a decade and a half. They have a lot of nerve to ask to be involved. Not being involved in your wedding is just reaping what they sowed. Congratulations on your upcoming wedding. Landscaping owner rips off my friend for $400, so my friend makes him incur $15,000 in expenses. A while back, my friend was selling some stuff online, and among the items was a water heater. You know, the ones you see in every community hall and church kitchen? It was in working condition. He threw it up online for $150 and got an email from a person who runs a landscaping business saying he'll give him $100 cash today. Done. 2 weeks later, he got an email saying that it's not working. Weird. So my friend offered to give a full refund or cover repair cost if it's under $100. The guy instead sent an invoice for $400 saying the repairs had been done, and if my friend doesn't pay it in 48 hours, he'll send a debt collector after him. He paid it out of fear and emailed him the confirmation. The landscaping owner then emailed back saying, "This is the price you sometimes have to pay when selling secondhand electronics," followed by a "Have a great day. Don't let this hold you back," with a smiley at the end of the email. A month later, my friend was in a bar and overhears a girl talking about how her boss, who runs a landscaping firm, did over some guy selling a water heater. My friend said, "Oh no, I gotta hear this. Do you mind if I join your table?" And the girl said sure and told the story. Her boss had brought a busted water heater from a secondhand store for $25 and a working one for $100 and billed the seller for the repair for the busted one before he sold it for $300 to some community group. My friend asked, "Who did this so I don't hire that guy to fix up my yard?" She says the company name, and lo and behold, it's on the email of the guy my friend sold the water heater to. He was the jerk in this story. He told me he was pretty angry about it, but lockdown then hit, so he had other stuff to worry about. 18 months later, he was browsing the website he originally sold the water heater on, and he saw a bunch of landscaping materials: shovels, gardening stuff, wheelbarrows, lights for working at night, drills, nail guns, some construction materials, and a generator. Now, in my friend's location, apparently, if you're selling a generator, then you need to have a warrant of fitness for it, proving that it works, it's safe, no flayed wires, etc. Most people ignore it, and he saw that this generator is being sold by the landscaping firm. This generator, he said, just by looking at it, there was no way it would have a warrant of fitness. Word of note, failure for a business to provide the warrant upon request for a generator after 2 weeks, when reported to the official departments and enforced by the court, the punishment is a hefty fine, and the courts often force the seller to refund the affected party and pay any costs that they incurred. evilplottingmusic.mp3. He talked to his flatmate, who agreed that they would go 50-50 on the generator, but he would transfer the money. Now, my friend had never met the landscaping firm owner face-to-face when selling the water heater. He left it outside, and pickup was confirmed via his security camera. And when he gets there, it was clear that the owner, this old grumpy-looking man who enjoyed yelling at his employees, had emptied out his storage unit. The owner was very much, "As it is, no refund," and the flatmate showed him the transfer confirmation, and they take the generator for $800. No warrant of fitness provided. They then took it to a friend of theirs who's an electrician, and he agreed to check it out and give an invoice for repairs, and to quote the friend, "It would be cheaper to buy a new generator, and to be honest, this generator shouldn't have been sold. It should have been scrapped." They also found that the main identifier number had been scratched off, but not the second number that's often recorded on the warrant for tracking purposes. So they got in contact with the seller, telling him the cost for repair, around $5,000. He promptly tells them that he's not paying, "As it is, no refund," to which they then asked, "Have you got the warrant of fitness for this generator?" Silence for 2 days. They followed up with another email asking for it. No response. They then ask again and get an email from him saying that he'll take it back for $800. They said, "No, we want the warrant," and they get no response. They emailed him every day for 2 weeks, nothing. So they printed out the original item listing that had been screenshotted and had been archived on the website and reported him to the website and then to the government. 4 months later, my friend is in court and the guy went up to him. He tells him that he will take back the generator for $800 and that my friend and his flatmate will be going in to tell the judge that the seller has refunded them and that they want it all dropped, and that's what's happening here. Full stop, end of story. They're doing what they are told to do. My friend said no. So they went into the courtroom and it's over very quickly. The inspector the government sent out to inspect the generator stated that it was in poor condition, shouldn't have been sold, was highly unsafe, and that the seller had tried to get the generator a warrant in early 2021, but instead had been told that it was to be repaired or scrapped and that it was not to be sold. They identified it by a second number on the generator that they took down in the original attempt to get it a warrant, which had not been scratched off like the first. The judge ordered the landscaping firm owner to refund the flatmate the $800, pay the $5,000 for repairs to the generator, and was ordered to pay a $10,000 fine, which would be given directly to my friend's flatmate as the affected party. When they left the courtroom, the owner was furious and told them that under no uncertain terms was he paying them a penny more and that he couldn't understand what he had done to deserve such treatment. To which my friend said, "Remember the water heater?" He gave him a very confused look. "Remember the water heater you bought for $100? Well, I do, because I sold it to you. And I know that you had a different one repaired and invoiced me for it." His jaw was on the floor, and to hit it home, he said, "It sucks, doesn't it, when what goes around comes around, especially when it accumulated interest. You have 48 hours to pay or a debt collector will be contacted. Remember, this is the price you sometimes have to pay when selling secondhand electronics. Have a great day. Don't let this hold you back." And they left. He paid the $15,000 2 days later. My friend and the flatmate split the $10,000 50-50 as they agreed, combination of rent payments and study stuff. The generator they got repaired, and then they got a warrant for it before selling it for $1,000 with a newly replaced identifier number. They then went out for a wonderful dinner and night out in town. Karen, my wife, gets busted stealing from my parents' house. Huge mistake. Background: my wife, who's 28, and I, 30 male, as well as my brother and his wife, went to visit our parents as we hadn't seen them in a while. My parents, who are 57, had a box of $300 ginseng in the fridge to be given as a gift for their close friend's wedding anniversary tomorrow. We know this because it came up in conversation during lunch. They also told us to help ourselves to anything in the fridge, but to not touch the ginseng for obvious reasons. The problem came when a few hours later, my parents called us in a panic, saying that they couldn't find the ginseng and asking if anyone had seen it. I didn't take it, and at first I thought they just misplaced it somewhere. However, they insisted that they both agreed on not moving it out of the fridge drawer for that exact reason. All of us denied taking it, and the conversation got more heated when my father started yelling that someone must have taken it since it only went missing when we came to visit. All of us continued to deny taking it, with my wife being really quiet, and my father said that if it doesn't turn up, he'd have to have everyone's belongings checked. That was when my wife admitted that she took it. Apparently, it was some popular brand that my in-laws mentioned, and she wanted to give it to them, and she thought that no one would notice since it was an inconspicuous place in the fridge. My mother-in-law later called and said that my parents overreacted over such an inconsequential thing and screamed at me that I was a jerk for not defending my wife. The thing is, in my opinion, it wasn't a small thing. My wife literally stole hundreds of dollars from my parents and tried to lie her way out of it. While I agree that my parents shouldn't have started yelling and accusing us, I feel like my wife was in the wrong for taking the ginseng in the first place. This situation has caused a lot of friction, and we haven't been speaking since coming home. Am I the jerk? Update. After making the post, I thought a lot more about the situation. I realized after reading the comments that this indeed wasn't a one-time situation. Things in our house like face creams, kitchen utensils, and even household tools would go missing, and I would just believe my wife's excuses. I feel like such an idiot for not realizing it sooner, and honestly, I can't believe she took advantage of my trust like that. I guess a part of me refused to believe the truth, which was how she thought she could get away with it this time. When I brought up divorce, she immediately threatened to call the police to arrest me for being violent, when I had never done anything like that, so that I could never find a job again. So needless to say, my lawyer is being called, and this marriage will be over very soon. I've also apologized to my parents for all this awful behavior, and they've accepted. To be honest, this is probably the best ending, and I'm kind of glad this situation happened before it went on any longer. I'm incredibly done with my hopefully soon ex-wife and her side of the family, whose mother called me again yesterday entirely remorseless and called me a childless mama's boy. Thank you everyone for all the help and comments. And to clarify a few things, from what I'm aware, mother-in-law was aware of my wife's actions, especially since she had done this sort of thing before, taking things from our house to give to them, and didn't see anything wrong with it since neither of them liked my parents. And since it was going to be a short visit, like 2 hours tops, she thought no one was going to notice the missing ginseng before we left. Not the jerk. Your wife literally stole a $300 item from your parents, and her mother-in-law are mad that she got caught. Honestly, if my husband did that, I'd be having a long think about continuing the marriage. Not the jerk, 100%. Honestly, it would have me rethinking the marriage since she's revealed herself to be a liar and a thief, and I don't blame your parents for yelling. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you divorce her or not? Please let us know. What is it with people threatening to tell lies about you when you break up with them? Like, do you really think that's gonna win my heart back? I'll meet the call count, but I won't make the calls count. I worked at a call center for a collection agency for nearly 5 years. Anybody that has worked in this type of environment knows that there are all sorts of targets that are expected to be met. The daily, the monthly, whatever. One of our targets was to make a certain number of calls per day. I believe it was 120 calls. Naturally though, the more contact you would make with debtors, the less time there was to make other calls. It's usually not an issue, but some days you might make significantly more contact than others, and sometimes your call count might be like 2/3 of what it should be. We would get regular updates on the call count, and our manager would let us know if we were on track, and at the end of the day, they would give you the final results. I found it very annoying when you would have a successful day collecting debts and generating revenue for the company, only to have a manager dwell on your call count. Any protest such as, yes, I didn't meet the call count requirement, but hey, look at the revenue I generated today. It doesn't matter, the target must be met. Even if it wasn't a successful day, but I knew I still ended up spending much time in contact with these debtors in an attempt to collect, I would ask managers to review my talk time to see that the efforts were being made to do what we're hired to do. It doesn't matter, the requirements must be met. Now, to be clear, a call only counted if someone picked up or the call went to a voicemail box that wasn't full. The system was unable to register events otherwise, meaning if you were to make hundreds of attempts in one day, only a fraction are registered. Everyone is aware of this, but it didn't matter to the company. Well, I was tired of the unfairness of it all. It also doesn't help that the company was grossly skimming our bonuses that our department's client provided to us as a reward for successfully collecting on these debts. It was really obvious when our bonuses became random numbers when it was only possible for them to be in multiples of 5. Frustrated with this literal theft and underappreciation of successful collection, the whole point of the job, I decided to comply with the call count expectations and never be under the target again. I created a notepad file with a list of all of the telephone numbers that went straight to voicemail. These are often numbers that have blocked us, or presumably the owner of the number has set it up as away or something like that. From then on, I made sure to make 15 to 20 calls per hour that would register, implying that even more calls were being made that they just couldn't see due to the way the system registered calls. I would spread these calls out so my activity wouldn't seem suspicious and would spend all day reading articles on the internet. Naturally, the revenue I had been generating decreased by about 80%. How come you're not collecting? Well, manager, you can see I am surpassing my call count target and my talk time is very low, so I'm just not getting the opportunities to do so. It should be noted that whatever I was collecting after doing so was really easy. The people whose accounts we received who could pay and wanted to pay anyway. Often these people would call us, so I just relied on that to make it appear like I was doing anything at all. They started giving me lower value portfolios to work, which was fine by me. You're stealing my bonus, the very incentive I have to do more work than the bare minimum anyway for a paycheck. I honestly thought I was quiet quitting, but no. I had a reputation as a valued member for our department and company, so no one wanted to fire me. I guess they just chalked up my lack of success to the bad portfolios they were assigning me. Steal my bonuses and dwell on a target that would be better judged as a marker of effort rather than an end-all be-all, and I couldn't care less. I was getting paid to read. This went on for nearly 2 years until I had to leave for mental health reasons. Am I the jerk for canceling the vacation when I found out that my stepdaughters hid my daughter's passport to get her to stay home? I've been married to my wife Beth for 5 years. I have a biological daughter named Jessica, she's 18. And I also have 2 stepdaughters named Monica and Leah. They're 25 and 28. Both are single moms and live with us currently. There's been issues about my stepdaughters asking my daughter to babysit their kids. Jessica didn't have a problem with it at first since this is what she does to earn money. But since her stepsisters don't pay her much, she just refused to babysit. We worked this out by having my wife take care of paying for the babysitting. I planned a family vacation for 3 days and everyone wanted to go. However, both Monica and Leah suggested that Jessica stay home and watch the kids, since Beth doesn't want her grandkids to come. They said it's because the kids are used to Jessica and hiring another babysitter would cause issues, and also that Jessica isn't too fond of our destination, but it was obvious that Jessica wanted to go. They insisted, and Beth offered to pay her double, and there was just a lot of back and forth until I demanded that they stop bringing it up. We were supposed to go last week, but when everyone had packed their bags and it was time to go, Jessica found out that she didn't have her passport on her. We searched her bag, then went home and searched there. Beth and my stepdaughters kept insisting that we go back to the airport or else we'd miss our flight. They insisted that Jessica stay at home with the kids. They even told the new babysitter to go home because she was no longer needed. I refused to go and kept searching for the passport until Monica admitted that she helped Leia hide Jessica's passport to get her to stay home with the kids. I was livid. I tried to get her to tell me where it was, but she said Leia had it. Leia denied, so I threatened to cancel the vacation, and that's when they gave it back. I decided to actually cancel the vacation and blew up at both of them and berated them. They stayed upstairs for a while, and Beth refused to speak to me and said that I punished my stepdaughters for worrying about their kids and wanting them to stay with someone they know. I got told I overreacted and ruined the trip for everybody. Edit. Kicking the stepdaughters out is not possible since my wife co-owns the house that we currently live in. Not the jerk. And to be honest, I would have kicked your wife and lazy no-good stepkids out right then and there and ended the marriage. If they were 12, I might understand this level of entitlement and immaturity, but in their late 20s? And what on earth is wrong with your wife? You should have roasted them for pulling this BS. Not the jerk. You don't just have a stepdaughter problem, you have a wife problem too. I would rethink your current family situation and how your daughter is being treated. Am I the jerk for insisting my partner skip a work event? I, 32 female, have been with Paul, 34 male, for 4 years. A year ago, we were in an accident. Paul was driving and 100% at fault. Paul had no injuries, but I broke my back. I was in a back brace for months, and I'm still going to PT. After I was out of the brace, I started going to the gym and running, and at this point, I'm in the best shape I've ever been in. I'm really proud of the progress I've made. A month ago, I found out that there was a 10K race on the 1-year anniversary of the accident in a mountain town about 3 hours away. I thought this would be a fun and positive way to spend the day and celebrate my recovery. I suggested this idea to Paul, my 2 best friends, and their partners. The plan was to drive there Friday afternoon, run the 10K on Saturday morning, and spend the rest of the weekend exploring the town. Everyone was on board. Paul recently started a new job. It's fully remote, and he hasn't met his coworkers yet. He's supposed to fly out to San Francisco to meet his team the Monday after our weekend trip. We knew this when we made our plans. A few days before our trip, Paul told me his bosses now want him to be in San Francisco on Sunday because they got box seats to a Giants game and they want him to come, so he would no longer be able to come on our trip. I thought he was joking because he likes to make fun of corporate culture, but he was serious. I told him to explain the situation and that they can't expect him to be available with less than a week's notice. He said he had already told them yes and he didn't want to backtrack. So I asked him to tell them he forgot he had a wedding to attend or something like that, and he said he didn't want to turn down the offer because it would be a really good networking opportunity. I suggested he join on Friday as planned and drive back late Saturday and early Sunday to catch his flight. He said no because he didn't want to drive 6 hours round trip just for one day. I suggested he fly out of the regional airport nearby, which he also shot down because it would be too expensive. He makes good money, so this wouldn't be a financial burden. I was almost in tears at this point, pleading him to come and telling him how important it was to me. When I realized he wasn't going to budge, I stopped trying to convince him, but I did let him know I was hurt and angered by his decision. The morning I was supposed to leave, Paul was trying to be affectionate and sweet towards me, but I'm still pretty upset, so I was admittedly pretty mean to him, and I rejected all his attempts at affection. Now he's upset with me for ruining our last day together and also for pressuring him to skip his work event. I think he's a jerk for prioritizing a baseball game over a celebration of my recovery, especially considering he's the one that caused my injury in the first place. My friends are on my side, but I'd like some unbiased perspective. Not the jerk on the initial part, but then you said, especially considering he's the one that caused my injury in the first place. That sounds really, really nasty. Guilt-tripping him for the rest of your life with him won't be good emotionally. Is the whole celebration of your progress a moment to rub his nose in the fact he caused it? Good luck. OP, you are such a bigger and nicer person than I am. Not once did you remind him that the trip was to celebrate your progress in recovery after he broke your back. I would have. Having said that, he was provided a couple of alternatives that were more than reasonable. And why is he paying for a flight and travel for business? Not the jerk. But he has shown you where you rank in his priorities. I would imagine if you look back in your relationship, you'll find you've taken the backseat more than not. OP. Opinions seem to be pretty evenly divided. I do want to clarify a couple things. I never tried to get Paul to come by saying or implying the injury was his fault. Yes, I was thinking it, but I've never used that against him. There are obviously resentment issues, which is something I'm working through, but I would never say that to his face. A lot of people are saying I am the jerk because I was pressuring him to skip his work event. When I realized how important it was to him, I tried to compromise with him to be able to make both events happen. It was his refusal to compromise that was upsetting. Not the jerk. Paul is the one that ruined the day, not you. He was at fault for the accident that could have been much worse. Thankfully, you're making great progress. It's completely understandable why this event would mean so much to you. Paul shouldn't have agreed to go the day earlier without talking to you first. Instead, he immediately told them he'd be there. He didn't prioritize you at all and is blaming you for the fallout. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. You don't want to wait in the ED? If you insist. I work as a security guard for one of the few hospitals in our city. Besides dealing with combative patients and visitors and doing patrols around the campus, we occasionally get asked to assist with getting people out of their vehicles and escorting them by wheelchair to the emergency department or their appointment at an on-site clinic. Today, a couple of nurses came to our office asking for our help. They had received a call from a gentleman who we will call Gerald, asking for help to get out of their car, as he was in severe pain. I went out with the nurses, pushing a wheelchair and radioing my partner to come assist, as it sounded like it was going to take some extra hands to help him out. It took a little bit for us to find him, but we found him thanks to him blowing his car horn for all to hear. Now, I have interacted with dramatic people before, and this guy was no different. He told us all about how he was in so much pain, how he drove himself all the way over here and couldn't move the car anymore, and how he needed to be treated. We tried to offer help, but he refused to grab our arms or hands to steady himself, relying on the car door and the wheelchair to get himself in it. Once he got himself settled, he asked me to move the vehicle to a better parking spot. After all, he had handicap stickers and he needed the space to get in when he finished his visit here, so I obliged, feeling a little bit odd about the whole situation, and moved his car to a handicap spot near the ED entrance. Gerald got checked in at the ED and we were done with the situation. At least that's what I thought. Boy, were we wrong. Not even 20 minutes later, I get told that this guy wanted to leave and wanted us to take him back to his car. Apparently, he started complaining and moaning about how the wait time was too long. Keep in mind that there were people in the waiting room who had been there for hours. The ED was very full today, and this guy couldn't stand being there for even just a few minutes. I first checked with ED staff because I was worried about the fact that he himself said he couldn't drive. They told me that since they hadn't triaged him and he wanted to leave so soon, they legally couldn't hold him here even if they wanted to, which they didn't care that much since they were already busy with treating their patients. So I went back out to the ED and I asked him point blank if he was really sure he wanted to leave, because I didn't want to be held responsible in case he drove and got into an accident. But he said yes, he wanted to leave right then and there. So I reluctantly pushed him out of the ED and towards his car. This is where my malicious compliance begins. Gerald starts saying, verbatim, "When we get to my car, I'm gonna call the ambulance." Me. Wait, what? Gerald. Yeah, gonna call an ambulance. I can't drive, and I don't like anyone here except for you. They're too slow here, and I'm not gonna spend all night here. Besides, calling an ambulance will get me to a room quicker, and I can get help with my pain. Me. So, you want to call an ambulance to take you to the ED when you're already here at the ED? And all that because the wait time is too long for you? Yeah. Me. You realize that if you call an ambulance, they may just take you back to the waiting area and have you wait there, right? Yeah, I know that. I'm still gonna call. Well, okay, if that's really what you want to do. So after helping the guy to his car, I decided to let him do just that. At that point, there was nothing else I could really do. After all, I'm just a security guard, not his doctor. So I just pushed the wheelchair back inside and went about my business. About 30 minutes later, I'm looking at the security footage, and right there next to the guy's car is an ambulance. My jaw dropped. The guy actually called 911 for an ambulance, and they came. I continued to watch as the EMT workers helped this guy into a gurney and placed him into the ambulance. Then, to my utter shock, they drove off campus. I had thought they were going to drop him off back here, but they left for another hospital. I then realized a couple of things. 1, this guy's going to another hospital and going to be gone for who knows how long. 2, when he gets discharged, he's not going to have a ride home because, you guessed it, his car is here at the hospital. Plus, our policy is that if a car is parked in our lot for longer than a few days and we've confirmed that the owner is not here, we have to call the police and report an abandoned vehicle. So this guy is now getting additional costs added to his medical expenses because he took the ambulance, possibly has to wait even longer in another ED before he can even be seen, and he may rack up some fines for abandoning his car depending on how long it's there. All because he didn't want to wait in the ED with everyone else. But hey, I guess 20 minutes was way too much for him. Am I the jerk for taking my garbage out late at night? I'm a newly minted single mom of 2 tornadoes and rarely have the time for everything in my day. I've all but given up doing big cleans while they're awake. Collect garbage, tidying, fixing, all I can do is damage control. Once they go to bed, I put a podcast on and I do the real cleaning. Another tricky side note, my 4-year-old has insomnia and sometimes I have to start a bit later than normal. Kitchen, bathroom, living room, litter boxes, take the garbage out and to the curb once a week. Sometimes I can't get to that point until 11 p.m., on rare occasions 3 a.m. I'm not a monster though. I place my bags gently in the bin and roll it down to the curb. The rolling can be loud and the bins are massive, so I keep it on the grass to cushion some of the noise. My neighbor was so kind to let me know that he called the police because there was someone in the back alley late at night where the bins are stored and picked up on collection day, but the police couldn't be bothered to show up. I told him, that may have been me actually. Don't worry about crimes and that. I'm just trying to get some cleaning done. Today I asked him, hey, we haven't spoken in a while. You guys okay? He was not happy. Well, I'm not used to noisy neighbors who think it's okay to take the garbage out after 6 p.m. I told him that time management can be difficult on my own, but he brushed me off. He said that even my neighbors across the way think little of me. Am I the jerk for cleaning later in the day into the night? Update. He's a bit of a strange old man with a crappy delivery, but I'd like to say, while he may have been rude, he's not a complete jerk. As an apology, he started mowing my front lawn. I came running out to stop him, but his lady was out there giving me grandma eyes, saying, good luck stopping him. I gave them coffee and tea, thanked them profusely, and we'll see how that goes. Maybe my yard was an eyesore. Maybe he's apologizing. Let's find out. We had a big chat about the garbage can noise, and I've apologized profusely. Keep the peace, boys, keep the peace. And I'll just keep my head down from here out, counting down the days to moving back to a real city and not a cliquey old folk suburb town. Not the jerk. Your neighbor is being obnoxious. This is not a big deal, and even if it was, the right move would have been to come talk to you about it. They're passive-aggressive, and I would discount them and anything they say from this point. Am I the jerk for asking my brother for money to fix my car, knowing that it would come out of my niece's college fund? So I, 36 male, have a brother, Mike, who's 44. He has a daughter, Addie, who's 16. For her 16th birthday, Mike bought Addie a used but still very nice car. She totaled it 2 months later in an accident where she was 100% at fault, and Mike did not buy her another one. So far, she's gotten by with Mike's car, but he recently had to take a business trip out of town and was worried about her being home alone without a car. He asked me to lend her my car for a few days as a favor. My wife and I each have one, and it wouldn't be a major inconvenience to me. I reluctantly agreed. When it was time for me to take my car back, Mike told me that Addie had accidentally put diesel fuel in it and that it had died in their driveway. I had it towed to a repair shop and asked for the $1,500, the amount quoted to by my mechanic, from Mike to get it fixed. Mike told me that he would transfer the money soon, and I told him to take as much time as he needed. Later that afternoon, Mike's wife Lisa called me to tell me that the money for my car would be coming out of Addie's already meager college fund. She begged me to let the money go because Addie needs that money for college. She actually started crying, and I started feeling really bad. The thing is, I do have the money to pay for the repairs. I'd have to take it out of mine and my wife's shared savings account. I actually already have with my wife's permission. I would put the money from Mike into that same savings account to restore the original amount. Even so, I told Lisa that Addie needs to have consequences for her actions, and if that means she has less money for college, then that's what that means. She meekly agreed and hung up. Yesterday, I got a text from my sister. She basically called me a selfish jerk for taking money out of Addie's college fund over a stupid mistake. She said that I was being cruel and that she knows I have the money, so I should just bite the bullet and let them keep the money. Now I'm struggling with this dilemma, and I figured that I should get some unbiased perspective. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Addie needs to get a job and pay for something to learn the value of $1. I would say the biggest problem is that it seems like Addie has not been taught correctly about how to be a responsible person with cars. Kids do stupid stuff, but kids are more likely to do stupid stuff when they are not taught correctly by their parents. If she's that way with cars, she's probably that way with other aspects of her life. Again, given that she's 16, I would say that this is her parents' fault for not teaching their daughter correctly. Addie should get a summer job to pay for that $1,500. Her parents obviously work and get by, so I doubt that they would be dependent on her income. Let her pay for it. Depending on how hard she works, you could cut her a break if she's a little short at the end of the summer, or you could make her pay every penny. It shouldn't be coming out of her parents' pocket, your pocket, or her college fund. She's 16 and can drive. She can work. 20 hours a week at $7.25 an hour is $150. It would take her 10 weeks at a minimum wage job to pay you back. Assuming she works June and July, that would be around 8 weeks. It's still May. No excuse. Actually, since she's 16 and the dad asked for the car, the responsibility is 100% on the parents. The parents can choose how it's paid and what the consequences are for Addie, but it's not up to OP to tell them how to parent or where to get the money from. Likewise, it's the parents who have decided it's coming out of the college fund, so really not okay to try and guilt OP about where the money's coming from. That was their own parental decision. The parents need to grow up and take responsibility for their own decisions and responsibilities. Need me to stay back and cover a shift? This will cost you big time. This comes from about 15 plus years ago, when I was, and still am, working with people with disabilities in a community home. It's a great job for those who like it, a terrible one for those who don't, meaning that any staff you meet are either very new or long-term like myself. As a consequence, the turnover rate of staff is high, and replacement staff are slow to be hired, meaning you often find shifts not covered straight away. This is an industry where simply not having a shift filled isn't an option, particularly where I work, in a house with a single day staff and a single night staff, each working 12 shifts on a 7-day spread over a 2-week roster. There are some strict rules regarding hours you can work, intended to avoid burnout, but more used to keep a rein of overtime, which in our industry is paid at plus 70% your hourly rate for the first 3 hours above your 76-hour fortnightly maximum and plus 100% for any time after that. You can't demand overtime, but if they require you to work longer, they can't not pay you for overtime. Also worth noting is that people we work with are vulnerable, meaning they cannot be left unsupervised. Long story short, you can't go home until your replacement arrives. So back in the early 2000s, we were having problems locating staff. Lots of people working overtime and a lot of fresh faces appearing and disappearing. The house I worked in wasn't difficult in particular. 4 adults with intellectual disability, but there was no support, by which I mean the worker there had to fend for themselves. There was no supervisor in the next building. They were miles and miles away. I'd frequently at this time had to stay back half an hour, waiting for staff to come replace me. I was less than happy with how it was handled each time I called the office to tell them, "The night staff haven't arrived. Do you know who's booked?" To which I'd get the reply, "We're still looking. How late can you stay?" The obvious answer was, "Until I'm replaced." But what I often said was, "I prefer not to stay after the end of my shift, but that doesn't seem to matter now, so I'll just stay until someone comes." Every time a new face arrived, I'd give them all the information they'd need for the shift, introduce them, walk them through their duties, etc. This would take 20 to 30 minutes. The point being, I don't just jump ship when a staff member arrives to replace me. This is someone's home and I like them, so I'm not going to leave them in the hands of someone uninformed. Cut to that weekend. My roster had me working 12-hour days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Come Friday night, my replacement didn't arrive. I waited. I sent a text message to the supervisor after 15 minutes, then called after 30. left a message, and when they eventually called back, I could tell they had not found a replacement. I told them I'd stay until they did. This was, by that time, an hour after I was meant to finish, 10 p.m. Come 11, they call me and say they simply can't find a replacement. They offer a deal and say if I can stay and do the night shift, I can take the next shift off. It's pretty even, so you won't miss out, they said. Then they changed their tone and said, "It's not really a request. We have no other option. Treat this as a direction." I reminded them it was a passive house, meaning you got half the hourly rate from midnight, but you could sleep in the bed provided, so I'd actually be taking a pay cut. They didn't know what else they could do, so I made a suggestion. I'd stay and do the night shift, but I wasn't going to give up my next shift. I was going to do that one as well. They agreed. It meant that they didn't need to find a replacement for me in the morning, so they thought it was a good deal for them. It was, however, an even better deal for me. It took a few emails over the weekend with the union to sort out the particulars, but what happened was this. Once I couldn't leave my work site because of a lack of replacement, I was on overtime. As this overtime was because of a direction, not voluntary, it remained in place until I went home. Because I didn't agree to drop my following day shift, my overtime continued till I ended on Saturday night. The upshot being that working 36 hours in a row resulted in the equivalent of 60 hours worth of pay. I was the first person to, as they say, pull this stunt, and word got around that if you didn't get replaced, you were actually the person who was in a position of power. It didn't take long until the department put a little more effort into training and employing extra staff, so something like this would never happen again. Not to me, at least. My daughter is demanding I pay her Ivy League college tuition with my retirement savings. I'm 40, male, and my wife is 40, female. We have a 17-year-old daughter who is in the stage in life where she needs to think about college. My wife and I have agreed that we will pay for her 2 years in community college in our town and 2 years in university to finish her bachelor's. My daughter was on board with this until recently. She now wants to go all 4 years to an Ivy League school because that's what her friends are doing apparently. We have plans of retiring early, and an extra $50,000 or so is really going to push us back on that, so I'm not on board with that idea. Also, it's not like she has tons of money saved to get an apartment elsewhere, so odds are we would have to pay for that as well. It's a firm no for me, which has made my daughter incredibly upset with me. She's been guilting my wife, and now she feels bad for her and thinks we should do it. Apparently, she thinks she's going to miss out on a huge opportunity and will feel excluded from her friend group. Community college is also lame in my daughter's mind, which is an incredibly privileged thing to say in my opinion. Big financial decisions in our marriage require a yes from both of us, and it has always been this way, but now my wife is upset with me too. Now mother-in-law is also involved, and I'm the villain to everyone. We could technically afford it, but as I said before, it would really push back our plans in life, which I'm not okay with. And keep in mind, I'm not forbidding her from doing it, it just won't be on my wife and I's dime. I'm completely indifferent to paying the same amount and her getting loans to cover the rest, should she really want to go that badly. I feel crazy for even posting this, because I don't see how I could be the jerk, but since everyone is mad at me, it does make me wonder. You're the jerk if you can afford it. My parents agreed to cover half of wherever I decided to go and made me apply to both cheaper schools and the expensive art schools I wanted to go to, as well as financial aid and scholarships. Then we sat down and plotted out the expenses for each one I was accepted into so they could really explain the financial situation to me. This is her first major adult decision. I think it's best to help her make her own decision. Also, I don't really believe that she said, "I want to be with my friends." That sounds like your interpretation. My girlfriend refuses to dress nice for our date night. So we had decided to go out on the weekend, and I suggested going somewhere fancy. She says okay, and I find an upscale Chinese restaurant and show it to her. She says cool, and we agree to spend the evening there. Fast forward to the evening, I see her dressed in a t-shirt and worn down jeans. I asked her why she's not wearing a dress, and she just replies, she doesn't feel like it. I'm like, okay, but I told you it's a fancy place. And she's like, it's just a Chinese restaurant. I pull up the Instagram and I try to show her their feed to convince her that it's upscale, but she doesn't even want to look at it. I again ask her to dress nicely, and this time she's upset and she says we're not going anywhere tonight. We haven't talked since then, and it's been a day now. She usually likes to dress up, even when we go to a normal bar. This is leaving me confused. Am I the jerk here? Edit. I just want to make a few things clear. The place had a dress code, smart, elegant, so not really dressy and not too casual either. I wasn't asking her to specifically wear a dress, but just to dress a little bit better. We live together and I know her wardrobe, and a dress is usually what she prefers to wear when she dresses up. I looked at a few posts and stories on their page, and in most of them, the women seemed to be dressed up a bit. I did not want her to feel uncomfortable when we got there, as she's pretty self-conscious. Edit 2. People keep asking me what I wore. I wasn't dressed yet. I usually wait until she's done. But anyway, I was planning to wear a polo shirt and a pair of chinos. To people saying chinos and a polo is not dressed up, this is in Dubai, and the weather is insanely hot, especially during the summer. Wearing a suit is not an option, and when you do, you look out of place. Hard for us to tell, considering we don't know just how fancy the place is. There are places where people tend to dress fancy, but it's no big deal if you don't. And then there are places where if you don't, you stand out like a sore thumb. Depending on that, either side could be right. Not the jerk. Dressing up for a restaurant or an event is just basic adulting. You gave her a heads up in advance regarding how fancy this place was. You mentioned she has dressed up in the past, so she has no trouble doing it. I think the real problem here has yet to be articulated by her. I hope you find out what the real issue is and you can work it out. Update us if possible, and good luck. You're the jerk. You seem to have conflated smart clothing with a dress. Why did it need to be a dress? There are plenty of smart clothes women can wear that are not dresses. She isn't a jerk for looking at pictures of the restaurant and determining that, in her view, she was dressed appropriately. You aren't a jerk for having a different view, but the whole "why aren't you wearing a dress" thing? Yup, I can see why that irritated her. Edit to add. Personally, I'm not wearing a dress to hang out with a dude in chinos and a polo shirt, but that's just me. Karen demands I cut her extremely long hair. I'm a hairstylist. I had a woman book her daughter in for a trim and color with me. I'm not their usual stylist. The stylist they usually go to is on holiday, and I was recommended to them by a friend. When the mom booked the trim and color in, she specified that her daughter had really long hair and asked if that was okay for me to handle. The receptionist said yes, because I have a lot of clients with waist-length hair. Waist length is usually the longest hair I'll cut. I've never had a client with hair longer than this. Due to issues with my knee, I can't kneel down for long. I'm awaiting surgery. When they turned up for the appointment, the daughter had her hair up in a bun, so I couldn't see the full length of her hair. The mom thanked me for being able to get her daughter in. She said that when their usual stylist isn't available, it can be difficult to get her daughter an appointment due to her hair length. When the daughter sat in my chair, I asked her to take her hair down so that I could brush through it before we started her color. When she took her hair down, I noticed it was much longer than I expected. I asked her how long her hair was, and she said it was knee length. She brushed her hair back, so it was all going down the back of the chair, and it was well past the length I was comfortable cutting at. I would have had to kneel down to do it. I waved the mom over as I told the daughter I couldn't do it. I apologized to the mom and told her that I would not be able to cut her daughter's hair due to its length. I explained that it was too long for me to cut it, as I couldn't kneel down to cut it. Understandably, the mom was upset that I was refusing to cut her daughter's hair. She demanded the booking fee back. I informed her that the £50 booking fee was non-refundable, and she would have been told this at the time of booking. She then demanded to speak to the manager of the salon. I told her that I would get her the owner. The owner of the salon did refund her the money. She told me that I shouldn't have taken the booking if I couldn't cut hair that long. I told her that the length had never been specified to me. The receptionist was just told that it was long, and long hair in our area is usually no longer than waist length. She knows I can't kneel without being in pain. The mom has since been writing on the Facebook page of the salon, complaining that I refuse to cut her daughter's hair because I can't actually cut long hair. I feel bad that mom is upset about this, but at the same time, it was never specified how long her daughter's hair actually was. Am I the jerk for refusing to cut extremely long hair? Not the jerk for not cutting the hair, but you are the jerk for no refund. I would be pretty mad about that. You're the jerk for saying the booking fee was non-refundable. The issue certainly wasn't the client's fault, so in no circumstance should they be out $50. Soft, you're the jerk. Seems like there was miscommunication here. Mom thought she had communicated everything she needed to. She didn't have any way of knowing that there's a length which you can't cut because of your knee issues. Where you fall into jerk territory is how you responded to her when she asked for the refund. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my mother-in-law stay with us because she's upper class? I'm 29, female. My husband, who's 30, grew up with a family with similar amounts of money as mine. But I grew up solidly blue-collar and middle class. My dad was a boat repairman with all my uncles, while my husband grew up more in a white-collar world, playing piano, sailing, owning horses, etc. We had a vacation home in a small beach town where we spent our whole summers, while my husband's family spent 2 weeks each summer in the Hamptons. Our families just spent their money differently. We're all still about the same bracket, but act differently. My husband's family occasionally visits us since we own a home with a guest room. They're nice, but very different. For example, their homes are immaculate, nothing ever out of place. They move very deliberately with everything they do. I'm not dirty at all, but I will sometimes leave out books I'm reading for a few days or have more clutter. They don't swear, ever. I will if the situation warrants it, but never like at someone, more when telling a story. They're just a bit more uptight, which makes it hard for me to be totally authentic with them. They also judge me when I'm not the same as them. For example, they show up unannounced to drop in. I'm like, sorry it's a little messy, we didn't know you were coming. They look around and say, yeah, I can see that. Or when they met my parents and my dad dropped a few no-no words at my parents' house and he had a few beers in him. They were shocked and clearly uncomfortable. Some dirt gets on the floor from someone's boots and I don't pick it up right away. Someone is pointing it out to me instead of just waiting 5 minutes until I finish what I'm doing. Even cooking is different. My family is from Spain, so we make, in my opinion, amazing food and we go all out, and we don't worry about cleaning until after. They make very safe meals, like pasta, very carefully, and never let a single thing drip out of the saucepan. Everything is moderated. My mother-in-law recently asked if she could stay with us for a month. I like my mother-in-law and I don't mind her staying with us occasionally, but I always need to do a deep clean, be super careful of any messes while she's here, speak in lower tones, and never swear. It's like I can only show so much of myself and always need to be careful. I can't do that for a month. I told my husband no, and he got upset. He said I'm more open with my family, and I should open up to his family. I told him I can't, because they say they want to be close, but then judge me every time I do something less classy than them or act different. He told me I need to just ignore them and be myself and allow them to come over. I refused. He's angry, and now we're at a stalemate. Am I the jerk? Edit. Our beach house was tiny, with 1 bedroom and a 3-season porch for the kids, and we shared it with all of our cousins and aunt and uncle. We also rented it out during the off-season. We did not grow up learning how to ski, we went to public school and did not travel much. My husband traveled the world, went to Aspen, and hung out with people much richer than him as a kid. His parents did everything they could to maintain that lifestyle, including working multiple jobs, renting vacation homes in desirable locations for a week instead of buying, etc. We came from similar money brackets, but his parents really wanted the upper-class lifestyle, while mine wanted to stay more blue-collar in nature. My parents both came from serious poverty, but did well with his business that he started when I was a kid. I was unaware that there could be these subtle class differences until I met his family. My husband's long-term ex was super wealthy, so that doesn't help. I never claimed not to be privileged. I'm so grateful to have grown up in my situation and have amazing childhood memories. Whether you want to call this a lifestyle or class difference, there's a clear difference between his family's expectations and mine. I see this as a good way for them to decide if they really want a closer relationship. Let them come and be yourself. She doesn't like the mud or the boots tracked in? There's a broom. Wants to clean the kitchen before eating? Will be eating. Has a judgy look on her face? Ask if there's a problem. She'll either start relaxing or she won't. Either way, you get to keep living your best life. And please invite me to dinner when I'm in the area. No jerks here. Not the jerk. By the way, it's not classy to drop by unannounced. Their cultured upper-class ways may be only so much pretense. Go ahead, swear, drop things on the floor. Just be yourself in your own home. Either they'll get comfortable or they can leave. You're the jerk. I can see why your husband is angry. Your family lives near you and are over all the time, but you can't host his mom at all? Like, if a month is too much, just shorten the visit. How would you feel if your husband told you that your family is not welcome in your home at all? If he insinuated they were nuisances to him personally and he can't be bothered to be around them? Wouldn't you be angry? Also, as advice, you might want to start dealing with your insecurities. They seem to be coloring just about all interactions with your in-laws. Most of the things you mentioned have nothing to do with class. Being tidy and not swearing is not a crime. They might have different bearings, but they are your husband's parents and your in-laws. They're not forcing their upbringing on you from what you wrote. Try being yourself a bit more around them, and next time they point something out to you, ask them for help. Keep a book out on the table. Who cares? Don't keep a facade around them 24/7. How can you expect them to like and bond with you if you in fact never show them yourself? Am I the jerk for wanting my roommate to replace my special wine that her friend opened? I, 23 female, share an apartment with 2 roommates, 28 female and 25 female. My 28 female roommate, Morgan, sometimes has friends over and they'll watch movies and drink something, usually wine. I don't really drink, just once or twice a year on special occasions. The most recent time was because my sister wanted to do a wine tasting while we were on a trip together. I found the first wine that I've actually enthusiastically liked, a spicy wine infused with hot peppers. I bought a bottle, took it home, and put it in my section of the shared pantry. A couple of months went by without incident. Then one Friday night, I came home to Morgan and 2 of her friends drinking it. I confronted her about it, and she said that her friend had opened it without knowing it was mine. Morgan apparently realized the mistake, but thought it would be okay because I've said that I don't like wine before. What makes you think that made it okay? I've said that before, yes, but this is literally the only wine I've ever enjoyed enough to buy a bottle of. I was saving it for a special occasion, or maybe to share the next time my sister came to visit, but they drank most of it, and now there's barely a glass left. I told her I wanted her to replace it, and she agreed. Well, a couple of weeks later, she said that she had gotten me another bottle, but it was just regular wine from the store. I told her that she must have misunderstood. I don't want just any old bottle of regular wine. I want her to get me another bottle of the actual wine that she and her friends drank. Her eyes got really wide, and she started complaining about how that winery is a 3-hour drive away, and that wasn't fair because it was her friend who opened it and not her. Honestly, I told her that I didn't really care. Morgan knew it was mine and let her friends drink it anyway. She could have told her friend that it was mine, put it away, and told me about it, and I would have understood. But no, she let them go ahead and even poured herself a glass. She was still drinking it when I came home. So yeah, I've told her that her friend can replace it or she can. Don't really care how, I just want another bottle before the lease is up next year and I move out. Morgan is mad at me. She's been avoiding hanging out in our shared living room and won't speak to me at all now. Our 3rd roommate thinks I'm being unreasonable and wants me to just drop it and accept the regular wine bottle as a replacement, so Morgan will get back to her old self. They're both making me feel really bad now, and I'm wondering if I'm being too harsh, so am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She needs to keep her mitts off of other people's food and drink. Not the jerk. I don't believe her friend took it by mistake. Do you let your friends rummage through your cabinets to find whatever they want? Either way, Roomie needs to replace with the exact same thing. It doesn't matter how she gets it or how inconveniencing it is. This is the consequence of not respecting boundaries. The box of skulls. In my free time, I like to draw. One subject of interest is skulls. Usually I have to search the web for images of them, but I know a biologist, so I called them up and asked if I could borrow a cast, not a real skull. They said that they never loan out a skull because they will forget who they loaned it out to and it just disappears. Online, they go for $300 to $2,000. She had the ones that are not open above the eyes so you can see into the brain cavity that are obviously for study. They looked more real as they were cast from real skulls, and thus have some of the character and damage of the originals. I think they're rather sturdy plastic with a little heft. They are all 2 pieces with a detached mandible. In addition to human skulls, she had other mammals including apes and monkeys that have fangs. Strangely, she said she would be willing to loan out all of the skulls, and that way they will not forget who has what. I agreed, and grinning, I took a huge box of them home. My wife saw the box and asked me what was in it. I said, skulls. She said, no, really, what's in the box? She didn't believe me. I can imagine bringing a big box of Legos a colleague's family was passing on or something like that, and upon being asked, saying skulls or some other random improbable item just to be funny, because whoever would have expected a box of skulls? I said it again. She got mad and said, fine, don't tell me. Now at this point, I've had my fun. She was indeed surprised by my answer, and I could have filled in the details of how and why I got the skulls and when I had to return them. But I was told not to tell her, so I did that. I complied stubbornly And with perhaps a bit of malice, because of her extreme reaction surprising me, I froze up and became defensive when I'm surprised because of my childhood. She grew up with older brothers, and they were always teasing her growing up. You can be sure her orange juice had gummy worms in it. She has a short fuse for foolery. On the other hand, I was the oldest with a stern and overly firm stepmother, and I learned to do as I was told to the letter, lest I face the consequences, which go beyond the scope of this post. I put on stubbornness just as she wanted an explanation. She asked again, and I said that I had answered the questions, and besides, I had just been told to not say anything else. I think we were both a bit steamed. She didn't get an explanation because I stuck by her command to not say anything. She pondered for a while, and I didn't see when she slipped to another part of the house to get closer to the box. When she was near it, she pounced on it and opened it up. I didn't even see her. Without context or explanation, she got an eyeful of scale-sized skulls. I saw her talking to herself. "He said skulls. These are skulls. A box full of skulls." It was kind of a moment of shock. They were not neatly stacked, just jumbled mandibles and craniums. Of course, this was not what I had imagined when I came home with this box. I rather wanted the enthusiasm and wonder that I had. Well, it was botched. But I explained the details after she had found that I had not been sarcastic. We recovered gradually, and it all kind of played out again when the kids came home from school. Here's what happened with them. They were surprised by the box of skulls too. My daughter had scheduled a scary movie night with friends. My son buried a monkey skull, smaller, and veggie sticks, the salty ones that look like French fries. My wife was like, "Oh, no you don't. We don't do that here." During the film, one of the girls pulled out a monkey mandible with fangs. It was dark, but a surprise to everyone. Much screaming. Turns out my wife only removed the cranium. The mandible was still in there, buried in the veggie sticks. No one knew. It turned into a sleepover. Fine. They were up later than me. I had to work, so I got up. No shower, no nothing. Just get out of the house. On the way out, I noticed that they arranged all of the skulls in a row, perfectly pairing each cranium with its mandible. That's a difficult task. As I get a handful of cereal to munch on the way out the door, I'm inspired. I put an ODO in each eye socket. I'm out to work. I heard later that they thought no one had been downstairs before them, and they were certainly last to bed, so they could not explain the cereal in the eye sockets. It was terrifying, much screaming. When Halloween came around, one of them dressed as an ODO. Don't remind you about your passport renewal? Cool. This happened a few years ago when my now husband and I first started dating. We were going on holiday in May in order to attend his friend's destination wedding. I don't mind his friends, but for the purpose of this story, I have to say they are more his friends than mine. He needed his passport renewed, which needs to be done every 10 years here in the UK. Knowing that we had this trip coming up and that his passport needed renewing, I reminded him back in, I think February, that it was a job that he needed to do. I think the third time I reminded him about it, possibly sometime in April, he slightly snapped at me, or was at least a little off, and basically said, "You don't need to keep reminding me. I'll sort it out." Fine. Even though this was still early in the relationship, I had already noticed that my boyfriend, as he then was wonderful in many ways, but he is a bit of a procrastinator, and especially has a tendency to put off boring admin-type jobs such as this. I can't say I blame him, but I'm the sort of person who gets things like that done as soon as I notice them, because otherwise they'll be on my mind. But he was absolutely right. This was a trip to see his friends. My passport didn't need updating. It really wasn't my job to remind him about his or chase him about it. I didn't especially care what happened either way. The trip was extremely cheap, and the travel insurance might have even covered canceling it. Malicious compliance activated. Well, wouldn't you know it, something like 5 days before we were due to leave, he sheepishly comes to me and says he still hasn't done anything about his passport. I don't know what it's like elsewhere, but I think standard lead times for passports here are at least a few weeks. So he ends up doing a priority request, or whatever it's called, where they fast-track your application. I think from memory the basic application is £79, and then priority on top was another £150, and possibly more for fast shipping. I think the whole thing ended up costing him around £250 with everything in together, when it should have been £79. My memory is blurry, but I think he also had to get a new passport photo taken and authenticated quickly too, which I seem to remember was really stressful and rushed for him as well. We did get to go on the trip as everything came through the day before we left. He apologized for having snapped at me and for asking me not to remind him about it. But by that point, I wasn't even angry, and honestly, I felt bad for how much stress and expenses he had gone through. He's improved how he does his boring life admin since then. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that I don't care about how her wedding turns out? I'm 29, male. My sister, who's 26, has always been incredibly spoiled. It's always her way or the highway, so I knew that when she got engaged, she would be a handful. Her wedding is coming up in about a year, and she's already started planning. She sat us all down, my mother, father, and my other sister, and told us what they had decided for the theme. Now, personally, I think it's a little tacky to put a theme on the wedding, but it's not my wedding, so I held my tongue. Her theme was nature, and this was applied to everything. She wanted a floral lace dress, succulents as favors, and the ceremony to take place in a greenhouse. Again, tacky, but not my wedding, so I didn't say anything. The issue arose when it came time to talk about the reception venue. She said that she wanted it to be outdoors in one of those huge event tents with windows so that we could be in nature. My whole family hated the idea. An outdoor reception just seems very cheap and not at all classy. We suggested that she go with something a little more classic, like an event venue, but she had her mind set. I got really upset because the entire family was telling her that they would prefer one thing, and she was insisting she do another, when she was literally the only person who wanted it. At first, I tried to go easy on her by telling her that the themed weddings are just a fad, and if she commits to her theme so heavily, she'll look back on it in 20 years and cringe, and that it's better to choose something timeless, like a simple dress in a hotel ballroom. I said she could definitely incorporate flowers into the centerpieces and decorations if she wanted, but to have the whole wedding centered around plants and flowers just seemed like too much. Never one to take advice, my sister just said that she's sorry we feel that way, but her and her fiancé have wanted this for their wedding for years, and they've spent a lot of time coming up with the details together. And they wanted their wedding to reflect their personalities and who they are as a couple, and she didn't think my timeless suggestions would be able to do that. Here's where I might be the jerk. I kind of let my frustration get the better of me and said, "Fine, I don't care if your wedding turns out to be tacky. I knew you were going to be an inflexible bridezilla anyway." I do think that she was being too rigid and just thinking about what she would like instead of what her family and guests would prefer. But my parents say that it's my sister's wedding and that it wasn't cool to say that I didn't care. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. 1. There's nothing wrong with her theme. 2. It's not your wedding, so your preferences are irrelevant. 3. One person's tacky is another person's treasure. 4. There is nothing timeless about your basic suggestions. Yeah, you're the jerk. You sound a bit spoiled as well. It's her wedding. She has the right to do what she wants. You and your family can suggest, but getting upset when she goes on her own direction is selfish. Neighbors tell me to stop using my hammer because they have a new baby. My neighbor just rang my doorbell to tell me his wife said to stop hammering. I was dumbfounded. I just kind of stared and said, "Excuse me?" And he informed me that we would be unable to make any sort of noise for the next few months because of their new baby. To which I laughed in his face and closed the door. And now his wife is screaming at my door, and he's messaging me to please just do what his wife says. So some background. My spouse bought this house in 2011. Both houses are single-family detached homes. Both lots are 1.5 size lots, so there's roughly 33 feet between our houses compared to the 6 feet for the rest of the street. Neighbor husband was already in his house. I moved in 8 years ago. Shortly after, saw the neighbor for the first time, and it was someone I've known since I was 4 years old. We went to school all the way through high school together. We're now 40 years old. 3 years ago, he met a woman. She had at the time a 2-year-old daughter. She would stay at his house, and I would constantly find the kid wandering the streets. They would just send her outside with no supervision, no toys, no fenced yard, and expect her to entertain herself. The kid was, and still is, nothing but a brat. 2 years ago, she moved in with him and brought her daughter with her. I run a daycare, so my yard is full of fun toys, but we also have 3 other fenced-off areas, one for our pool in the summer, one for our dogs, and one for our hot tub. All these have separate fences and self-closing gates, plus my external fence is 6 feet tall. During 2020, when lockdown hit, the kids were doing virtual schooling from home. She never actually did it. She would be ringing my doorbell in the middle of the day asking me to open my yard for her to play. I would explain that she can't be here when I have daycare kids and my daughter will come out to play after supper. She went to their backyard, dragged patio furniture to my fence, and climbed over it. Who knows how long she was actually out there, but she decided she was done and then couldn't get out. The latch for my main gate is at the very top so that the kids can't open it when my back is turned. She started screaming, so I ran out in a panic. I took her home, explained what had happened to her mom, and her mom gave me crap for just not allowing her to play. I face $100,000 fine if she's caught on my property during daycare hours. I explained this. She still snapped and called me a jerk. I left it at that. It happened a handful of more times. I started sending them daycare invoices. Still kept happening. I finally told them I would have to call the police next time, which I did. Except this time, Mom and Grandpa were both sitting outside on the stairs and watched her do it. Also, never bothered to come help her open the gate when she started screaming. Police told them to stop or Mom would face charges. I now have proximity sensors at the top of my fence, and I get a notification if anything goes over my fence. It's gotten better as she has gotten older. So last summer, we set up our above-ground pool. Just ordered a new pump system and heater. Pool was half filled. I had also just done up all my planters. I casually glance at my security cameras and see her by the pool. I head out. Main gate was open as the neighborhood kids were running from yard to yard playing. She took it upon herself to go to the pool and take buckets of soil from my planters and dump it into the pool. $400 of damage to my brand new $1,000 pump and heater system that was up for less than 4 hours. I snapped and screamed at her to get out of my yard and to not come back. She's not allowed in my yard at all unless me or my spouse is out there. Now to current time. They had a new baby last week, and me hammering in my basement is disturbing them in their house 33 feet away. And they expect me to wait until the fall to finish my project. So I'm currently sitting on my bench outside, enjoying a glass of water with my outdoor speakers playing metal while I mow the lawn, which is much louder than the little bit of hammering I was doing. I'll finish that tonight after dark. Edit. Lots of people are saying to call the police. I do call the police when I feel it's necessary. We live in a major crime area, and they're always busy with that. If I call, because it's nonviolent and they recognize the address, it's at least 24 hours or usually not at all. As for the concerns about her wandering the neighborhood, I'm in a smaller city. My kid has been playing by herself in the neighborhood with regular check-ins since she was 4. I have no issues with that. At 2 and 3, when she was originally doing it, was ridiculous. As for saying not to let my daughter play with her, I cannot take my daughter's entire friend group, which is exactly what would happen. We are one of 3 houses in a row with kids. House 1 has 3 kids, House 2, the problem house, has 2 kids, and House 3, mine, has 1. House 1 and 2 all go to the same school. They're already outside playing by the time my daughter gets home. My daughter does activities on Saturday and Sunday mornings, so the same thing. So not allowing my daughter to play with one kid also takes away 4 others. Am I the jerk for leaving a dinner date after he fed his dogs a better meal than us? Title screams of entitlement, but let me explain. I started casually dating a guy 2.5 months ago. We have gone on several dates, such as movies or dinner at restaurants and the arcade at the pier near the ocean. It's been a really pleasant time, and I don't want you guys to think I don't appreciate this guy, because I do, but this really rubbed me the wrong way. As for who has been paying for the dates, we usually split 50-50. He has paid for me once, and I've paid for him twice, but the rest is split. So he knows that I have a gastro-reflux disease, severe acid reflux that I'm on medication for. I can't eat anything that has red sauces, barbecue sauce, or artificial dyes such as red or blues. Yes, the medications help, but only if I'm sticking to a pretty clean diet. I can't even eat hamburger because of the red dye they use. When I eat the things mentioned above, I feel like I'm having a heart attack. As I said, he knows all of this. We've talked about it several times. So he invites me over to his place and says he wants to make dinner. He makes a point to tell me to make sure you have a strong appetite, so I didn't eat anything at all since breakfast, and I was starving after working all day. So I arrive at 6 p.m. and I see him making steak, eggs, potatoes, and corn on the cob, the small ones that you put in pasta salad. It looked and smelled delicious. He puts on a movie while we wait, so I'm in the living room the entire time he's cooking. Well, he keeps going back and forth between the kitchen and living room, and on his last trip back, he brings out our plates, and much to my surprise, it's pizza. I just kind of look at him and ask where the steak and eggs were, and he pretty bluntly said that that was for his dogs, 2 German shepherds, and stated that they eat better than he does. I reminded him that I couldn't eat pizza, red sauce, and he starts arguing that he made sure to not put too much sauce on it and kept telling me to just try it. I asked if he had anything else, and he said no. I told him sorry, but I needed to go, and I excused myself. On the way home, I grabbed myself something to eat. Well, he calls me, and it sounds like he's having a meltdown. Says he can't believe I made him feel like that, and that the pizza was homemade, and he made sure not to put too much sauce on it. But he knows I can't have it at all, and said something about adding sugar to it, etc. Said I've showed my true colors. My friends also think I'm overreacting here, and said I'm acting jealous of his dogs. Am I the jerk? No, not the jerk. This is what casual dating is for. He seems to have confused dislike of strong sauce, hence the sugar, for an actual medical condition. But it is odd that he can't seem to understand the simple medical explanation. Not sure this has anything to do with the dogs. It worsens the offense because he had all this food she could have eaten and that he's perfectly capable of preparing, but he gave it to someone who can eat other stuff and gave her something cheap and bland in comparison that she can't even eat. The pizza wasn't served due to lack of skills, budget, or time, but as part of a deliberate performance where he invited her to watch him make superior food for someone else. Not sure what satisfaction he gets out of that, but not relationship material. Not the jerk. None of this would make serving someone food they can't eat acceptable. It just eliminates every possible lame defense. This guy deliberately put on a performance about the food he was preparing. He got her worked up and expecting something really special, even prepared it in front of her, and then pulled a bait and switch for something he knew she couldn't eat, and tried to guilt her into going against her medical diet by pulling the jealousy card. Nope, he's testing her boundaries to see if he can be controlling. Am I the jerk for refusing to pitch in money towards my sister-in-law's IVF treatments? My brother, Reed, and sister-in-law, Nora, have always wanted to have kids. However, they're unable to conceive naturally. Nora had multiple ovarian cysts and eventually needed to have both of her ovaries removed as a teenager. Reed and Nora are in their early 30s and are very urgent about needing to try sooner than never because they say that they're approaching an age where IVF success rates start to decline. Because of Nora's past medical issues, I'm told that she will need extra care and her round of treatments will be especially expensive, a little over $27,000. Reed and Nora already have $9,000 set aside in savings for IVF. They've raised $1,000 from friends. The rest of the family is pitching in smaller amounts as well. My mother is giving $2,000. Nora's sister, Lauren, is giving $1,000 and her parents are giving $4,000, which leaves about $10,000 left. Their insurance will not help to cover it because they don't consider it a medically necessary procedure. Reed and Nora also have had difficulty qualifying for an IVF loan as they have some poor credit. Reed and Nora are asking me to help because, according to the loan advisor, I'm allowed to take out the loan on Reed and Nora's behalf. $10,000 is a huge ask for me, and the fact that Reed and Nora have poor credit shows they already don't have a good track record of paying back loans. When I questioned why they didn't ask Lauren, they claimed they couldn't because she isn't single and childless like I am. They see it as me not having any dependents. My mother and parents-in-law don't have a lot of savings, and their earlier mentioned donations were already a huge gift for them. It takes a long time to correct a bad credit score, and it makes things much more difficult. And harsh as it is to say, I don't want to take out thousands of dollars in a loan for a procedure that has a good chance of not even working. So I told Reed and Nora no, and that their future kids are not my responsibility. I also wanted to put my foot down now, because next it's going to be private school tuition or a college fund, and that shouldn't be my responsibility just because I'm currently single and childless. Nora was obviously disappointed, but told me she respected my choice. Reed was angry. He told me that he would remember this for when I'm ever in a time of need, so that I will know how it feels to have family turn their back on me. The rest of the family members have essentially told me, "We're not mad at you, just disappointed." Because Nora worried for years that she would never be able to have kids or be a mother. They say Reed and Nora would be wonderful parents, and it isn't right that they can't conceive naturally, which I do agree with. However, I still stand by Nora and Reed's future kids not being my responsibility. I don't think that it's fair that I should delay or give up the possibility of starting my own family in order to finance Reed and Nora's. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. And as a mom, I wonder if they can afford having a kid if they can't even take a $10,000 loan. Oh no, not the jerk. That is not your responsibility. I'm sorry that they're struggling, but common sense would beg the question, if they can't afford IVF, how could they afford the kid? The treatment may not even be successful. In addition, being single and childless and child-free doesn't mean you don't have your own obligations and causes to which you'd want your money to go. Best of luck to you. Not the jerk. Never loan money or co-sign a note for people who can't get a loan on their own. There's a reason banks reject them. It's astounding to me that people are so brazen. You should put your financial stability at risk just because they'd want you to? That's nuts. Finally, maybe Reed and Nora should wrap their heads together around the idea that they cannot afford IVF and should consider something radical, like adoption. Adoption is actually more expensive than IVF. From the conversations with people around my age who adopted or considered it, it's typically $50,000 to $80,000 from what I've been told. You can do foster to adopt, but that is not a setup which everyone can handle. And if they only want a fresh newborn baby, they probably won't want to do that, since it's usually toddlers and older. We adopted, and it was less than your numbers. Adoption has a lot of possibilities. My cousin has done foster to adopt for 2 infants and had expenses of less than $2,000 in total. Here's the reality. Some people want to be parents. They can adopt. Some people want to be pregnant. There's nothing wrong with that, and adoption doesn't satisfy it. I wish people would distinguish these more often. If a person can't get pregnant, that doesn't mean they will never be a parent. However, it may mean they will never experience pregnancy. For some people, that's devastating. Bruh, this dude really thinks it costs $80,000 to adopt a kid? Calm down, Karen. It's Reddit. You know how these people are. I made a customer cry. So I had a table a long time ago with a nice couple who were at the restaurant during our dying down hours. Everything was pretty quiet at this point. We were close to closing, and I was bartending, so I had started my cleaning duties for that. Well, this couple had been extremely pleasant. I offered different items to upsell the check, and they were happy I was giving suggestions. I made them several drink refills. They were very polite and just enjoying their night, but they were pretty quiet. I didn't mind though. I was busy cleaning up and closing down the bar. After I give them their meals, I say, "All right, you guys, if everything looks okay, I'll leave you to it. If you need anything, I'll just be cleaning behind the bar here, so you can wave at me or call me over if you need something. But I'll still be keeping an eye on you guys and checking up a few times." I usually only offer this towards the end of the night since I'm kind of distracted with scrubbing things down, doing dishes, and other bar-related things. But this couple was content with just quietly eating their meals. They didn't need any more drinks or anything, so I just cleaned. When I noticed they had finished their meals, I went over and offered a dessert for them to try, upselling of course, and they happily said sure, so I went and grabbed it for them. I also grabbed 2 new spoons since I had cleared their table already. Well, I had my nails done at this time, and I'm not quite sure how it happened, but when I sat down the plate with the dessert, I went to hand the woman her spoon. Somehow, the spoon slipped from my fingers as I was handing it to her, and it flung and pelted her kind of hard in her chest. I immediately went from professional service voice to panicked, unexpected voice and rushed together. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I swear I wasn't trying to throw that at you." This sweet woman just started laughing and laughing and laughing until she was crying uncontrollably at her table. And when she finally caught her breath, she said, "That was the funniest thing to ever have happened to me in a restaurant." She started laughing and crying again, so I started to chuckle once I knew she wasn't upset. And her partner was just smiling while he ate his cake and said, "If you knew the day she had today, you'd know how much it means that you got her to laugh this hard." I just chuckled again and said, "Well, I'm glad I could make you laugh. Did you hear that panic in my voice? I was so worried I would have accidentally upset you," which caused her to laugh and cry even harder and say between laughs, "That's what's making me laugh so hard. You sounded so panicked compared to your service voice." After I laughed and apologized again, I decided to just leave them at that point to enjoy the rest of their meal. And as I was cleaning up some more behind the bar, the woman was still laughing and eating her dessert. She laughed all the way until her and her partner walked out of the door. The guy left me $50 with a note thanking me for making his wife's day better and to not throw spoons at any more customers. Am I the jerk for telling my brother it was a dumb decision to invite his new girlfriend to our nephew's birthday? I'm 20, male. My brother Ron is 27. He met his late girlfriend Linda when they were 16, and they started dating shortly after. To say the family adored her would be an understatement. Linda was beautiful, smart, and had an amazing sense of humor. She's been part of the family for so long that most of us don't remember a time without her. Most of our best memories have her in them. Linda was very close to my nephew, Drew, who's 6. Drew is disabled and he's autistic, so he has a hard time connecting to other people. I don't know how to describe the relationship between Drew and Linda. They just sort of clicked. From the moment he was born, she was his best friend and would often watch over him. Sadly, Linda passed at the end of January after she was hit by a drunk driver. The entire family was devastated and we're still mourning her. Drew took it especially hard since he doesn't really grasp what death means yet. He constantly asks, "Where is Linda? And when will she be coming back?" Sometimes going as far as having full-blown meltdowns because he misses her so much. He's currently attending therapy to learn how to process his grief, but it's a slow process. Drew's birthday is in 2 weeks, and my sister and brother-in-law sent out invitations to everyone in the family asking who can come. Birthdays are a big deal in our family and are usually an over-the-top event with catering, so it's necessary to confirm the number of guests. Apparently, Ron wrote that he'll come with Gia, a new girlfriend he's hoping to introduce to the family. Most of the family's upset at him for moving on so quickly. I personally think it's none of my business, and I'm not going to tell him what to do or how to live his life. However, bringing a new partner over to his nephew's birthday when he knows how said nephew was so attached to his former girlfriend and is still mourning her is idiotic at best and cruel at worst. Brother-in-law told Ron that if he's planning on bringing that girl over for Drew's birthday, he shouldn't bother coming at all. Ron called me to complain, and I told him the same thing. He shouldn't bring her over. Ron called me a jerk and a bad brother. He said he's finally happy again after Linda's passing, and why is it so hard for us to accept that he moved on and support his relationship? I told him I'm happy to hear he's doing well, and I'm sure the family would someday love to meet the girl that makes him so happy, but I'm standing by my opinion that inviting her now was a dumb decision on his part, and he chose the worst possible time and place to introduce someone new to the family. Edit. Ron and Linda were still together when she passed away. Not the jerk. I don't think your brother should be punished for finding happiness with someone new and shouldn't be held to your family's timetable for grief. But Drew's birthday is the wrong time to introduce her to the family given how young Drew is and how attached he was to Linda. Am I the jerk for not giving my sister-in-law and her family a luxury vacation? I travel a lot for work, so I have so many hotel and airline points it's crazy. This summer, I'm taking my family to Disney World. We're going to stay at one of the resorts on the property. My sister-in-law and her family had a hard time during lockdown, so I decided to do something nice and invite them along, my treat. I said I would pay for their flights, hotel, and park tickets. Everyone was excited until she started talking to my wife. Now she's upset that we're staying at one of the resorts and they have to stay at Disney Springs. Apparently, I'm being cheap by using points for their hotel instead of just paying for them to stay at the same resort as us. My wife told her sister and brother-in-law to just shut up and accept the gift, but they didn't. They told my in-laws that I was making their kids jealous by not letting them enjoy the same stuff as us. To be clear, the hotel I booked for them is very nice. It's just not the Grand Floridian. So I finally talked to them and gave them the choice of accepting my gift or not coming since I could still cancel their reservations. They started yelling at me for being a jerk and taking something away from their kids. I had talked to them like adults, but when they started screaming, their kids heard them and found out that they might not be going. Now their kids are upset at their parents for possibly messing up their vacation, and I'm the bigger jerk for making them look bad in front of their kids. Am I the jerk? Let me get this straight. You're gifting them airline tickets, park tickets, and a nice hotel, and they demand more? Cancel their tickets immediately. For their benefit too, so they drop this entitled idiocy forever. So the kids can learn you get nothing if you're being a jerk, so they don't try to walk all over you in the future. Not the jerk. That would be them. Poor kids. Heck, I'll take this amazing gift with endless gratitude. Disney Springs got 4.85 out of 5 stars. I'll be so happy and grateful if anyone did this for me. Your sister-in-law could have chosen this route. Your uncle is just amazing and is offering us this unforgettable trip. We'll be staying at a different location, but doing all of the same parks and activities together. This will give us the chance to have some time with just us as a family too. Aren't we lucky to have such generous people in our family? We are really so blessed. But alas, wah, I want more. Am I the jerk for flipping out on my husband via text after he let his phone die during a family emergency? So I, 34 female, and my husband, 35 male, had a plan this weekend that he would be the next state over for a college reunion while I stayed home with our 1-year-old baby. All is fine and well until yesterday right before he was leaving for the party that was at a bar, and I got an unexpected call from my parents who also live out of state. I'm a nurse, so they were asking what they should do with my grandma, who called them stating that she couldn't feel her foot and that she was in excruciating pain. I told them to take her to the ER immediately, and they said she couldn't walk, so I told them to call an ambulance. I called my husband right after, and the last update that I gave him before his party was that they were transferring her to another hospital for the emergency surgery for a life-threatening condition. I was waiting anxiously at home when the surgery was taking way longer than expected, around 3 hours. My husband hadn't checked in at all. I got a text from a number that I didn't know that was a drunk selfie of some guy and my husband with zero context. I texted my husband and said that I was worried sick about my grandma and didn't appreciate getting texted drunk selfies from random people. Heard nothing. After an hour, I texted the random number and asked if my husband's phone had died, and he said yes with a laughing emoji. Here's where I may be the jerk. I texted back, "Cool, my grandma is still in emergency surgery, laughing face." I never got a reply to this. About 4 hours later, when my grandma survived and was transferred to the ICU, I texted my husband how much he had let me down. This turned into a fight where he believes that he did nothing wrong because I knew he was looking forward to this party for 2 months and he couldn't do anything anyway. I blew up and told him how irresponsible it was for him to get drunk and let his phone die while I was alone with our baby during a family emergency. He apologized for not checking in more, to which I corrected that he didn't check in at all, not even the next morning. And he says that he did his due diligence in making himself reachable. And I said that a random number texting me a drunk selfie does not count as him telling me that his phone was dead, and that's how I should reach him. He said the name of the bar in passing a few times, but I couldn't remember the name, and I did not know the name of his hotel. He says I'm just overreacting, and it's not a big deal because it's not like he could do anything from another state, and that he did nothing wrong. Seeing his friends was important to him, and a lot of them he hasn't seen in 15 years. And that he shouldn't have to disrupt his plans to cater to me. I didn't ask him to take the next flight home, just to be available or communicate that he wasn't. I told him that I was afraid, and he could have at least checked to see if I was okay, and that it also isn't okay to let your phone die when someone else has your kid, even without an emergency. So, am I the jerk for flipping out on him? ETA. The emergency happened right before the party, so he was sober at the time and aware of the situation. I called him immediately after I had my parents call 911. You're the jerk. Let your husband enjoy himself and give him a break from the endless nagging. Don't be surprised when he cheats on you with another woman, one who isn't going to nag him constantly about things that he has absolutely no control over. You guys are heartless, individualistic jerks. They're a family. He's a partner and a father first. The least he could have done is check in as soon as he knew what was happening and apologize for missing communication earlier. This is the minimum expectation for an adult partner with a kid at home. Not the jerk, wishing your grandma a speedy recovery. I can only imagine how alone and scared you must have felt, and then the disrespectful drunk selfie on top of that. Your husband should be feeling mortified and needs to properly apologize and show support. Yes, exactly. So many people apparently think it's acceptable to just abandon your spouse in the name of having fun. My husband and I have lives outside of our marriage, but we always make sure we're reachable or inform the other person when we aren't able to be. Moral support during an event like this should not be so much of a debate. It's the bare minimum you do for a partner you're supposed to love and have promised to support in good times and in bad times. This is one of those bad times for your spouse, and you should make yourself available to them for that, even if it is long distance. Am I the jerk for declining to be my cousin's bridesmaid because our wedding is on the same week as my college graduation? My cousin, let's call her Polly, she's 24, recently got engaged, and she announced that the wedding would be in Puerto Rico next year. Polly is the first person in my generation to be getting married, so it's a very exciting thing for our extended family. Growing up, we were not super close since our parents didn't have a good relationship. However, as we were the only girls in our generation, she asked me to be a bridesmaid for her, which I am very flattered by. The problem, however, is that the wedding is on the same week as my college graduation. At my school, graduation consists of a week-long events, traditions, and ceremonies, which I know may sound trivial, but I didn't have a high school graduation due to lockdown, and my entire first year was online, so I've been looking forward to the graduation festivities for the past few years. I told Polly that I couldn't be her bridesmaid since I don't want to miss my own graduation, and also that I probably won't have the bandwidth to help her with all of the bridesmaids' duties leading up to the wedding. I could still attend the actual ceremony since it's the day after my graduation, but I just wouldn't be able to arrive before then. My cousin got very upset and basically told me I'm being selfish for putting my wants over our family and threatening to not invite me to the wedding. I lost my temper and told her that she could go ahead and take my name off the list then, since I cannot be her bridesmaid. Now my entire extended family is asking me to apologize to Polly and to agree to be her bridesmaid. My aunt, Polly's mom, actually suggested me to skip graduation altogether since they will just mail me the diploma if I can't attend. My parents were not very happy with what my aunt said, and now they're having an argument with her, and also said they would not attend the wedding either. I didn't mean for it to get to this point, and now my grandparents are also getting involved. Yesterday, my grandma actually called me and offered to pay for my flight to Puerto Rico if I agree to be Polly's bridesmaid, and it really hurt because I've already made peace with the fact that she isn't coming to my graduation since she can't afford the extra plane ticket to fly from home to my college and then to Puerto Rico, and the wedding is more important, which I 100% understand, but now it just feels like she doesn't even care. Am I the jerk for doing this? I thought I was justified for not wanting to miss the graduation week, but now I'm not so sure anymore, considering all the reactions from my extended family, and especially my grandma. Not the jerk. Congratulations, OP. A 10-year graduation, you earned it. This is a legit conflict of schedules, and you're not even that close with the cousin to begin with. Family is causing drama for its own sake. Am I the jerk for mansplaining to my girlfriend? I personally don't think this is an issue of mansplaining, but I want to present her perspective of the issue fairly and objectively. I don't want to make this story seem completely one-sided like some of the other stories I read on here. I, 23 male, am someone who loves fun facts. I love telling my friends and family fun facts and seeing their faces light up with the same interest as mine when I had first heard the fact. I've been getting the feeling lately that my girlfriend, who's 23, isn't really treating me with respect. When she talks to me, she acts kind of withdrawn and dismissive, and I sometimes feel like she responds to me as though she's like a boss speaking to a subordinate. Whenever I tell her things, she may be listening or she may not be. Yesterday, I told her a fun fact about how styrofoam containers aren't actually made from styrofoam. Instead, they're made from a material called polystyrene, and she didn't even blink and just said, okay. Today, we were over at a friend's house for dinner, and she let us take some pasta home for leftovers, and I heard my girlfriend say, "Hand me that styrofoam container." I got a little annoyed since this was proof that she doesn't give a hoot about the things I said. So I said in an annoyed voice, It's made of polystyrene, not styrofoam, but I guess it doesn't matter what I say since you wouldn't listen anyway." After that, all heck broke loose, and my girlfriend is refusing to talk to me because I was rude, even though I was literally just pointing out that she's being disengaged and disrespectful to me by not caring about the things I say and making me feel kind of unimportant. You're the jerk. I wouldn't listen to you either. Styrofoam is a brand name for polystyrene. He'd still be the jerk even if it were a different brand. Hand me the Kleenex, please. It's Scotty's. Don't you ever listen? You're the jerk. The common name used is styrofoam, so her calling it that doesn't mean she's not paying attention to you. Sharing fun facts is fine, but it's unreasonable to share a fun fact about, as an example, the scientific word for turkeys, and then get mad when the person you told continues to use the word turkey instead of the scientific name. I really hope this is the first time you made this type of comment about your girlfriend not paying attention to what you say, because if it isn't, that sounds incredibly annoying. It's not mansplaining, it's info dumping. Other people may appreciate it, but it sounds like your girlfriend would like it to be less, since it appears she gets higher doses of info dumping than anyone else. While fun facts are cool, to constantly talk about them can be exhausting. Where's your respect for your girlfriend exactly? Do you ask her if she'd like to know a fun fact, or do you assume and just tell her? Styrofoam fun fact would only be a fun fact to someone interested in styrofoam and how things are made. Why did you get annoyed over your girlfriend asking for a to-go container? It makes no sense. No one is going to ask for a polystyrene container. Why would you call her out in front of people? You seem to be the one that is extremely ignorant and disrespectful. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. And that doesn't sound like a fun fact, to be honest. Perhaps you might need to learn facts that people actually find interesting because what material some everyday item is made of is just not it. Also, a styrofoam container is called that for a reason. She's not wrong for calling the product by the name it was given. Agreed. A fun fact would be talking about why we call them styrofoam containers instead of polystyrene. Also, OP sounds like a super boring person to be around if this is their idea of fun. Am I the jerk for bringing up the fact my brother hasn't had a steady job since he graduated 3 years ago? Today, we had a little barbecue for Memorial Day at my mom's house, and my brother, who's 21, was noticeably tired and not really speaking unless spoken to, but he's kind of always been like that. It was enough to be noticeably worse today though. I asked him how he was doing, and he said he's fine and he just had a long night with his friends playing PlayStation. I told him he should have probably planned to go to sleep early so he'd have energy for the barbecue today, and he sarcastically responded that he couldn't help it. I regret my response to this, but I said, maybe you'd have more energy if you had a job. His demeanor quickly shifted, and he was pretty insulted. But it's been a recurring argument between us that he needs to get off his butt and help our mom with rent. But for some reason, he just doesn't. No matter how hard we poke and pet him, he won't budge. He's not in college, and the only money he makes is when he goes logging with his dad, which isn't really a job and only happens a few times a month. Eventually, he started crying and ran to his room. My mom was upset with me for ruining the barbecue, which I didn't expect to happen, and told me I should probably leave. I'm 23, female, and I've had a job ever since high school, and I'm in college currently. I moved out when I was 19 and never looked back. But for some reason, my mom isn't as strict with my brother as she was with me. She occasionally sends him links to places that are hiring, and that's it. Honestly, he's got a heart of gold and a lot of friends and family who adore him. I just wish he'd get a job to help my overworked mom out. Am I the jerk? You told him maybe he'd have more energy if he had a job? This right here is a cheap shot and doesn't even make sense. Not to mention a drama starter. Can't blame your mom for asking you to leave. You tout that you've had a job since high school, go to school currently and live on your own. Yet here you are starting unnecessary childish drama at a family barbecue. You're the jerk. You're taking a problem that has nothing to do with you and making it your problem. Comments like that are not going to help him. He's an adult. His job situation is his to deal with. And if he's not paying rent to your mom, that's up to your mom to sort out. I also think that you are not accounting for details you may be unaware of here, like if he may be dealing with some mental health issues or other problems in his life. You're the jerk. It's not your place to shame him. If your parents have an issue with him not paying rent or his lack of employment, they can talk to him. It's not your place. If all the poking and prodding hasn't worked before, it's not going to work now. A family barbecue for the holiday isn't the time nor place for such shaming anyway. Don't leave the clearance section until you finish tidying it. Another tale from my retail job, which I recently quit, while I procrastinate from my other work. This one is from about 15 years ago at my original store. I worked in the ladies section doing recovery, basically tidying up and sometimes printing price tickets for the shelves if any were missing or torn. And though it was generally possible to get it finished within the time allotted for my shift, busy days or events such as Mother's Day or pre-Christmas and Boxing Day sales turned it into a nightmare. As if the usual holiday shopping mess wasn't bad enough, the department manager, Stacy, had in all her infinite wisdom decided to put all of the ladies' wear clearance into this section at once. They actually did it for all the clothes departments, but most of them only had a small amount, so you could easily fit it all in the normal clearance racks. However, the ladies' department had ended up with 10 times as much clearance as usual for this time of year, because whoever decides what clothes we'll sell made bad choices, and we ended up with mountains of horrid outfits marked down to $1, even though most people wouldn't wear it if you paid them $50. Usually they would keep most of the excess stock out in the back and just have a few racks of it in the section, and as the stuff in the section sold and the racks got empty, they'd be replenished from more stock from out the back. For some reason, Stacy decided she wanted all the ladies' wear clearance to be available to customers at once, even though it didn't physically fit on the racks. Not to be deterred by stupid little things like logic and reason, she moved the regular stock from the main middle aisle of the section into other aisles, causing those to be overfull, and ordered the full staff to put the clearance all along the middle aisle. When I say the clothes were literally bulging off the shelf arms, I'm not exaggerating. You could barely even walk down the aisle without the first 4 to 5 things on each arm falling off. And of course, if a customer wanted to look at anything further back on the shelf, they'd knock most of the other stuff off in the process. So there was constantly a several-inch layer of clothes lying on the floor. This made it literally impossible to actually recover the clearance section properly, but generally, recovery staff were told to prioritize doing a little pickup every hour or so and make sure there was no stock on the floor and spend the rest of the time going through and recovering the section, making sure everything was in the right place and in the correct size order. So, I had a shift on Boxing Day, and I'd heard from the pre-shift huddle that one of the big regional managers was coming in to visit and inspect the store at closing time, and that we needed to make sure the store was perfect. Not sure how that was meant to happen on Boxing Day, and with half the number of staff we needed, but whatever. When I started my shift, 90% of the clearance clothing was on the floor. For most of the aisle, you couldn't even see the floor. I knew that there was no way I'd be able to keep the floor clean in the clearance section because my shift ended at the same time the store closed. Anything I tidied up would immediately become destroyed by customers. So I decided I would focus on getting the rest of the section presentable and then quickly try to pick up the clearance section in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the shift before the store shut down. At the start of my shift, I did a half-attempted pickup and clearance and tried to shove most of the mess to the side a bit so that it would at least not be right in the middle of the aisle, and then went to start the rest of the section only to be confronted by Stacy. Stacy: "What are you doing? Have you seen clearance? Why aren't you fixing it? It's all over the floor." Me: "Yeah, because you put too much stock in there. I picked it up, but it falls off again because the shelves are too full and customers just knock it down as soon as I fix it anyway." Stacy: "Well, are you planning to do anything about it?" Me: "Right now, I can't do anything about it. There are so many customers in the aisle, I can hardly get in there anyway. And since I can't keep clearance tidy with customers in the store, I figured I'd get the rest of ladies' wear tidied and then pick up clearance at the end." Stacy: "Not good enough. You need to make sure clearance is off the floor and sorted properly. You know Bob, regional manager, is due for a visit this evening." Me: "I understand that, but like I said, it's literally impossible to recover clearance because of how much stock is in there and how many customers there are. If I can at least do the rest of the area first, then it will only be clearance that looks a bit rough, and I can at least make sure everything is off the floor at the end of the shift." Stacy: "You don't get to decide what you prioritize. You need to make sure clearance is perfect. I know no one likes clearance, but you need to stop making excuses to get out of doing it. So don't leave the clearance section until you've finished tidying it." Me: "Okay." 5 minutes before my shift ends and the store closes, the regional manager, Bob, shows up and is escorted around the store by the store manager, Mark, and Stacy. They stop in front of ladies' wear, and Stacy just breathes. "What on earth?" You see, I had finished tidying clearance, but the shelves were still overfull, none of the stock was on the floor in that aisle, and everything was in the right size, order, and hanging neatly. The clearance section was my magnum opus of recovery, if I do say so myself. However, the rest of ladies' wear department had not been touched. Since I couldn't finish tidying clearance until the store was pretty much closed, and I wasn't allowed to leave clearance until I did finish it, it meant that the rest of the department looked like a bomb had hit it, with stock all over the floor, clothes draped over the shelves instead of hung up properly, broken coat hangers everywhere, and abandoned shopping baskets and piles of stock from other departments left lying around in the aisles. Bob and Stacy looked like they were about to lose it on me, but Mark, who knew I was generally a good worker, asked why the department was in such poor condition given that I was meant to have been recovering it for 3 hours. I explained. Stacy told me I wasn't allowed to leave the clearance section until I'd finished tidying it, but there's so much overstock and so many customers pulling things apart that most of the stock won't stay on the shelves. And one of those moments of perfect cosmic timing, right as I said that, one of the shelf arms behind me gave way with a loud crash, sending an entire rack of clothes to the floor. Mark just stared at me silently for a few seconds and then said to me, "Well, you've done well under the circumstances. You can go home." I'm not sure if Stacy got into any trouble, but nothing else was said about it to me by the store manager, and I never got any warnings or disciplinary action or anything. The following shift, more rails had been brought out from the back and placed in the central aisle of the store, and some of the clearance had been moved to those rails to free up space in ladies' wear. Stacy refused to talk to me for about a fortnight though. "Karen serves rotten food to the wedding guests, gets exposed." My husband, 27 male, and I, 26 female, were married 8 months ago. We had a big wedding with lots of food and drinks and people. I knew we would likely have leftovers, so I had arranged for them to be donated to the soup kitchen we sometimes work with. However, my mom went behind my back and took most of the food with her. I didn't really know what happened to the food. Until now. My sister, Callie, who's 30, got married over the long weekend. She didn't want to mess with any of the planning, and knowing how my mom was during my wedding, decided to let our mom take over the whole thing. All we had to do was show up where we were told and party. The ceremony was beautiful, but it was when the buffet was revealed that I noticed something odd. The food looked eerily familiar, like identical to what I had had for my wedding, except for a little more dried out and sad. I found an opening and went to ask my mom about it, when she happily told me that she saved a fortune by unfreezing the food from my wedding to serve to the guests now. I was horrified and immediately voiced my concerns about safety. She got upset and said I was acting like a snob and should be happy the food wasn't going to waste. I argued that it was never going to be wasted, but she wouldn't hear it. I didn't want to make a scene, but I was worried about people getting sick, so I snuck off to see my sister. She was horribly embarrassed, mentioned that mom had said something about saving money, but didn't question it because she didn't want to foot the bill like I had. She told me not to eat the food and thanked me for everything. From there, my husband and I discreetly started telling some of the guests to be wary of the food, and the rest of the night was fine. My mom caught some flack for being cheap, but I've also been catching heat myself. Some of our relatives have been saying that I intentionally made my family look bad and that the food was fine as it was frozen and then defrosted for the wedding. They say no one would have known if I didn't make a stink over it. I don't know if I did anything wrong. I could use some help and would like to know if I should apologize. Am I the jerk? Edit. I'm getting a lot of repeat questions, so I figured I'd post here. 1. My wedding had about 200 guests. My husband has a large family, and we intentionally planned for more people to come and knew that a lot wouldn't for one reason or another, so we knew we'd likely have leftovers and wanted to be smart about it. 2. My sister and her husband have been together for about 10 years. They recently decided to get married for tax reasons and wanted to do a courthouse wedding, but my mom begged her to let her do an event. So she had a small wedding with only 50 people. My sister hates planning and people, so she let my mom do everything. 3. Have y'all ever heard of garage freezers? They're super common where I'm from. Not the jerk. OMG. It's not that it was stored frozen for 8 months. It's that it sat on a buffet table for who knows how long at your wedding, then in your mother's car before it was frozen. This is not only tacky, but super dangerous. Not the jerk. Has nothing to do with it being frozen, but how it was frozen, stored, and then thawed out. Unless mom has a food handling degree, I'm sure that food has extras. Not the jerk. This is straight up unsanitary and a major health hazard. Your mother is a cheap, gross, and dangerous person. Oh yeah, and she's a jerk. Am I the jerk for telling my husband I'm not comfortable driving with our newborn 3 hours every day to take my older stepson to school? My husband, 36 male, and I, 33 female, have been together for 6 years. He has a son who's 10 from a previous marriage that goes to school 45 minutes away from us, right next to his biological mom's house. He's with us almost 5 days out of the week, so either my husband or I have been driving him to school every day. That's almost 3 hours back and forth. I asked for him to be moved to a school that's closer to us since he spends the majority of his time at our house. My husband and his ex decided that for now, it's best that he goes to the same school because of familiarity, and maybe next year he'll go closer to us. It's ultimately their decision and not mine. I'm currently pregnant and our baby is due at the very end of December. I asked my husband if my stepson can be taken to school by his biological mom for a month or so after the baby is home so that I don't have to drive 3 hours every day with a newborn in the cold and Midwest snow, especially since winter break is over a week or so after I give birth. To my surprise, I got hit with, "Don't worry, biological mom and I will figure out the arrangements for our son. I get that you will now have a different kid as a priority, but I'm sure that if stepson was your biological son, you wouldn't have a problem doing what needs to be done for both of them." I'm so hurt by that statement. I've taken care of my stepson as if he was my own since he was 4, and I've never treated him any different. I'm on maternity leave now until May of 2024, so I will be home and my husband works 24-hour shifts, so he can't take him on the day that he's working, so that responsibility falls on me. My family lives an hour away, so that's not an option to help with driving or babysitting every day. My husband doesn't have contact with his family. So, am I the jerk for asking for help after the baby is born for a month or so? Edit. His biological mom works 5 days a week, 12-hour shifts, so she'd have to switch her schedule in order to take him to school every day. Edit. Thank you everyone for your feedback and concurring that I'm not crazy in this situation. I've been crying about this thing the entire morning. I've read every single comment and the majority of you are right. It's a hard pill for me to swallow, but I will have to put my foot down. I have a lot to think about and discuss with my husband, but I know one thing for sure is I'm not going to put my baby at risk by driving for such long periods of time. Thank you for caring about me. Not the jerk. Your husband is completely ignorant. He expects you to be up feeding a baby all night, then get 2 kids ready to go, drive an hour in very possibly bad weather at 6 or 7 a.m., there and back, then again a couple of hours later? This cannot even be for the benefit of your stepson. Both kids and you suffer. It's not safe. Sleep deprivation is not safe. What about when the baby needs to be fed and you're driving? You'll have to pull over. Stepson has to wake up too early and spend that limited amount of time out of school in a car. No one is reachable should your stepson need a parent while he's in school, such as illnesses or injuries. Your husband is not a good parent or spouse. He and his ex are not thinking about their kids or you. If they aren't there to actually parent their kids, then they need to figure their own stuff out and not put that on you. Not the jerk. Pregnancy or not, biological or not, driving 3 hours a day for a 10-year-old to go to school when it clearly isn't necessary is a bit unhinged. If you were in the absolute middle of nowhere and online school wasn't available, maybe. Not the jerk. Let them figure it out. You'll be a busy mom with a newborn. I think your counter argument would be, if he were my son, I would enroll him in a school closer to where he lives so he'd be closer to friends, have a better social experience, and doesn't need to spend 3 hours in a car every day. Am I the jerk for expecting my brother-in-law to pay for my jet ski after he let my nephew wreck it? I just had my family out to the lake for Memorial Day. I work remotely from there, so it's not just a vacation home, it's my home. I'm single and I like to buy myself toys. I also like to entertain. I own 2 jet skis. They're a lot of fun, but also really powerful. My sister and her family came up for the weekend. We had a good time and I had a blast towing the kids around on a tube. The problem came when one of my nephews wanted to drive the machine. I said no because while I may call it a toy, it's not actually a toy. When I was in the house, my brother-in-law let my nephew drive it, but they skipped a step because he's an idiot. He forgot to attach the tether clip to the life jacket. The kid lost control and fell off. Normally, the tether is a switch in case you fall off, and it turns the machine off if you do so. So, the jet ski took off for a bit and then started making slow circles until it ran into a dock. A bunch of the plastic on the top broke and some got badly scratched. They came and told me, and I told him he had to pay for fixing my machine. He's mad because it was an accident. I said he took it and gave it to someone who didn't have permission or experience, and he's responsible. My sister and I talked, and she paid me for the parts I will need to fix. My brother-in-law is upset because it came out of their fun budget, and now he has to save up again for their vacation. Am I the jerk? Edit. My nephew wasn't hurt, just scared because he fell off, almost getting run over by it, and having to swim to shore. Not the jerk. Your brother-in-law should be begging you not to press charges. That was stupid and dangerous, and he risked his own son's life with his attitude. For real, no means no. Why would your brother-in-law allow his son to use this machine without ensuring his safety in the first place? It came out of his fun budget. Boo-hoo. Be responsible, not the jerk. Am I the jerk for kicking my sober brother-in-law out of my barbecue? I, 31 male, and my wife, Gal, 30 female, recently bought our first house, and yesterday we hosted our first big barbecue with both sides of the family and friends. Gal's brother, Jim, who's 26, has been sober for 5 months. I don't like Jim. Besides that, he's generally an annoying person. He struggled with his drinking and pills for many years and did all kinds of stuff to the people around him. Lots of theft and trespassing to keep it brief. He's sober now, lives with Gal's mom, and I guess he is getting his life together. Though he still isn't working or dealing with his court stuff, so I don't know what exactly that entails. He's become absolutely insufferable in his sobriety. Everything is about Jesus or sobriety, which I could make peace with, but he also has made it a habit of trying to save everyone around him from the dangers of alcohol. Every visit turns into a sermon or him walking around asking personal questions about people's drinking habits, insisting they need to reconsider their relationship with alcohol. I specifically told Gal that if Jim was invited to this barbecue, that she was going to call Jim and tell him that we wanted none of his preaching there. She got on the phone with him, but she was beating around the bush, so I asked her to put it on speaker, and I told him, Jim, you are invited, but you will not talk about sobriety unprompted to any guests. You're not a doctor or a counselor or nothing, so just don't. I don't want to hear a word. Both Gal and Jim said they understood. Well, the barbecue starts. Everyone was having a good time, and my uncle shows up. I offer him a beer, and he says something like, after this week, I'm gonna need something stronger, boy. Where's the brown stuff? On cue, Jim says something like, I don't know. Kind of concerning that that's how you choose to deal with a bad week, no? I straight up say, hey Jim, how about you grab your stuff and get out of here? He says, oh, come on, I didn't mean it like that. I say, Jim, I'm not asking you twice. Get the heck out of here. I've known this man my whole life, and you just called him a drunk in front of my family, so you can leave. He tried defending himself, and I just said, I asked for not a word, Jim. Everyone says I'm the jerk for not even giving him a chance or letting him apologize, but I think I was clear enough, so am I the jerk? Edit. Later on, when mother-in-law, sister-in-laws, and Gal kept going back to the point, Jim did not call your uncle a drunk, and I kept saying, he sure did. If he's saying my uncle deals with his issues with booze, then you're calling him a drunk. They say I'm putting words in his mouth, and that's not fair. I said he's the one calling out people for problem drinking. What's he think people are going to do when he's calling them out? Not the jerk, but you didn't want him there because you don't like him, so you shouldn't have invited him in the first place. Not the jerk. This is about intention. Brother-in-law didn't attend to enjoy a social gathering. He came to preach, judge, and condemn. His recovery journey is an ego trip. He was not there to catch up with family, talk, and laugh. He was there to cast the sinners down and shine his divine light upon the ignorant masses. He's the textbook definition of insufferable. You don't owe anyone an invite. Why would you tolerate someone whose only desire is to rain on your parade? Not the jerk. Sure, you were overly aggressive, but now your brother-in-law knows that you're serious about this, and maybe next time when you say no preaching, he will take you seriously. Unfortunately, with setting boundaries like this, you have to be ironclad with it the first few times to let people know that you're serious. Otherwise, they will walk all over them. Would I be the jerk to pay $5,000 to not shave my head? I, female 36, have a severe case, a condition where a minor infection causes the immune system to attack the sheath around my nerves. My case was severe, and I lost all strength in and control of my arms and legs. My face, arms, torso, below my waist, and my legs all feel like I put them to sleep, and there's almost no feeling in these areas. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. I required an ambulance to get me out of bed and appointments for 3 months. I have very long hair, down to my butt. It's always been very important to me. It makes me feel like me, which is super important when I've lost everything else. I've lost all ability to do things I'm passionate about. Laying in a hospital bed is havoc on the hair. I asked my wife, 43 female, to brush it several times, but it never happened. She's done what I needed otherwise. It did hurt a bit, as she knew how I felt about my hair. I asked the care staff at the hospital, but they were too busy. By the time I got home, my hair was in a horribly tangled braid. Pre-illness, I could have gotten it free in a few hours, but I couldn't control my hands at all. At this point, my wife made a half effort to untangle it, but lacked the patience for it. She called a few stylists to see if someone could come to our house and work on it, but no dice. Over the next 3 months, lying in bed, my hair transformed into a hard, matted baseball on top of my head. When I could get out a bit, we tried a few local salons, but they had no idea how to fix it. All suggested shaving it off, and that hurts my heart a lot. It would take 6 years to grow it back. This brings me to the issue. There's a salon 9 hours away that specializes in the issue. I have an appointment next week after an 8-week wait. The problem? They believe it will take 20 hours over 4 days to fix it. The appointment will cost $4,000, and it's another $600 at least for gas, hotel, food, and expenses. We're not rich in good times, but my wife has had to quit working to be home to care for me. My medical supplies have increased spending. It takes forever to get Medicaid to cover supplies. This is a disgusting amount of money we could really use elsewhere. If I felt like this was my fault, I wouldn't even consider spending that money. I feel like my wife could have prevented this all by just brushing my hair or having a measure of patience to detangle it when I got home. Also, she clearly hates working on my hair, and I will need someone to brush it, possibly forever. She's the only option. I know being a caregiver is hard enough. I don't want to be more of a burden. There's also the chance none of this works and I have to pay a lot of money and still lose it. I could live with a shaved head, no matter how hard it would be. Tomorrow morning is my last chance to cancel and get most of my deposit back. Would I be the jerk for spending all this money on my hair? Have you considered that your wife may be exhausted? She's already had to quit her job to care for you. Adding your specialized hair care on top of everything else is asking too much. On top of that, you would be using money both of you need to live: rent, food, utilities, transportation, medical supplies. Ask yourself this: is your hair more important than your wife eating? You would be the jerk if you spend $5,000 on your hair when neither of you have an income. Edit, per OP's comment, the wife also needs surgery and they have a kid. I'm not going to call you a jerk, but the reality is that you can't afford the expense. Here's the thing. Even if you spend $5,000 and your hair turns out perfect, what happens next month, the month after that? You can't take care of your own hair. Your wife doesn't like taking care of your hair. You would be the jerk to spend that amount of money fixing your hair that you cannot care for yourself. Soft, you're the jerk. You can't afford this. I know you love your hair, but with no income coming in, $5,000 is an awful lot to spend on something that isn't an absolute necessity. Also, what happens after? It doesn't seem like your wife is going to start taking care of it for you. What's to say that it doesn't get matted up all over again? Is there any way that you could have the hair cut and made into a wig? Am I the jerk for revealing while I rejected a promposal nearly 10 years ago? I, 27 female, attended school in the UK. Towards the end of our final year of school, when we turned 18, our schools organized something called a formal, which I suppose is a bit like a prom without the romantic aspects, as you're not supposed to go with anybody. And the idea of promposals generally isn't something that's done here. Nearly 10 years ago, I was preparing to leave school. I found out that not only did a boy in my class have a massive crush on me for years, but he was planning one of these massive promposals that are often done at proms. He had always been a horrendous bully to me. He would go from calling me names and claiming that I would die alone and unloved to stealing my friend's phone to get my number, or sneaking up behind me and cutting off strands of my hair, or going so far as to find my house through my father's distinctive car. Naturally, when the day for his promposal came along, he came out with his sign in front of the entire school, and I bluntly said no and walked away. I don't like confrontation or arguments, but I had no intention of sparing his feelings after all he had done, and I was honestly just uncomfortable and wanted to leave. He badgered me until the day I left school for turning him down and being heartless. His friends did the same. I didn't care. I recently met one of his old friends in my old town. I went to the business where one of them was working, and he kept bringing this up, saying that my bully had gotten depressed after we left school and hadn't dated at all because he was embarrassed from the rejection and was still hung up over me. He kept asking me why I felt it was okay to reject him like that, over some nasty words, and if I was really that petty. I got sick of it, so I told him, turns out that because of all these creepy things that happened within the classroom, he hadn't seen them or even heard of them happening. His friends and my other bullies within the class were covering for him. The friend abruptly left without a word, but apparently the gossip did the rounds. Now the friend group is divided in two. Many of them who didn't know are upset with him for lying and upset that their other friends hid what was happening as they think it went too far. The others are upset at me for airing his dirty laundry. His parents apparently also know now, and they're upset that he had their sympathy through lies, and now they know that he practically stalked me, which brings up questions about whether they want him to take over the small farm versus his younger brother. I wonder if I should have just let his friend be mad at me. I'd probably have never seen him again anyway. I didn't know that he would tell anyone, as he's never been one for gossip that I knew of. But I also didn't expect this to potentially ruin the life of someone I haven't seen for nearly a decade. Am I the jerk for telling his friend the truth about what happened? Not the jerk. Were you expected to lie for someone who made your life horrible for years? How could you possibly have known that everyone would find out? And even if you did, that changes nothing. He chose to do what he did all those years ago, and now he's getting found out for being a creep and a bully and lying to all of his friends, and that's somehow your fault? I don't think so. Karen and her family harassed my girlfriend and I over a parking spot. Big mistake. I live on a cul-de-sac where I rent a back house from my landlords. There's another elderly tenant who lived inside the landlord's house I was very close with that we'll call Good Sir. I have these neighbors next to me who I had gotten along with for as long as I had lived here before lockdown. The husband, we'll call him Mr. Chill, because he had been really cool with me. My neighbors have 3 cars between them. 2 belong to Mr. Chill and his wife. We'll call her Mrs. Hypocrite, and the other car belongs to their daughter. When lockdown hit, Mr. Chill's family, for some reason that didn't make sense to me, suddenly stopped parking their cars in the driveway and would park them all on the curb in front of their house, as well as daughter taking the spot I usually parked in. Finally, after a few months of this going on, I see their daughter outside, and I ask her if she wouldn't mind sharing the spot that I used to park in with me, explaining my situation with being overworked and exhausted from my job. She gives me an annoyed look and just responds by saying, "I use it." I realize I'm wasting my time. I tell her never mind, and I go inside. Not even 5 minutes later, there's a knock at the door, and it's good sir, letting me know that the neighbors want to talk with me. Mrs. Hypocrite is standing there all upset, asking me what the problem is. I explain to Mrs. Hypocrite what I said to their daughter, and she apologizes for coming off so angry and says, "You know, street parking is what it is. It's first come, first serve, and we're not parking to try and give anyone a hard time." The conversation goes nowhere, but we do end it peacefully. About a week later, I'm parked in my spot for a change, and my girlfriend comes over to visit. It's summertime and it's hot outside. Later that evening, I get a knock on my door, and it's good sir. He says the neighbors want to talk, and I see Mr. Chill standing right there, and he just asks if my girlfriend could move her car because she's got a bunch of curb behind her, but not enough for another car to fit. Before I can even say anything, Mrs. Hypocrite shows up out of nowhere and goes off saying, "I'm sick of going back and forth about this. She is double parked and there's not enough room for another car to fit. I understand that she's your girlfriend and she's visiting, but I believe that residents should get priority parking first. It looks like you guys are trying to save the parking for yourselves, and I'm not dealing with this anymore. She needs to move her car." I'm in complete shock and have a lot that I wanted to say, but I don't, and I just go inside to ask my girlfriend to move. She thinks they're hypocrites and moves just because she feels like that's all they have to feel proud of in their lives. The only reason I gave in to them is just so my landlords do not get involved and risk it turning into them not wanting to renew my lease with me. Otherwise, I would have said something. Funny enough, even though they got upset at my girlfriend for double parking, their daughter is the queen of doing that on our cul-de-sac without Mrs. Hypocrite telling her anything. Last year in November, good sir wasn't doing too well and went into hospice care. He gave me his car as a gift and a thank you for being family to him. I now had 2 cars, 2 spots, and an idea. Enter petty malicious compliance. Mrs. Hypocrite said that street parking is first come first serve and that residents should have priority over the parking. Well then, so be it. I only need to use 1 car and the other can just stay parked. Since I am a resident, I decided to park whichever car I'm not using in the spot that I would normally park at and swap them out every 2 weeks in rotation. My girlfriend parks in the reserved spot good sir used to. The daughter, her boyfriend, and Mrs. Hypocrite have not touched that spot since I started doing this, since one of my 2 cars is always there. As a little bonus too, Mrs. Hypocrite put one of their cars they aren't using back in the driveway, and when there's a party going on and all the parking is taken up, the spot in front of their house is sometimes open, and since again, I am a resident and the guests have all taken the other spots, well, I guess I do need a spot to park after all, right? Sorry, Mrs. Hypocrite, and to the daughter. I guess you'll just have to park around the block and take a nice walk to get to your house. I'm only following what you believe the parking rules should be. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.